the girl transmigrated into a book, becoming a debt-ridden wretch. Yet, she had incredible luck picking up a money-making child. She also unexpectedly gained a Duke husband. From then on, she lived a shameless, luxurious life. It all started 3 months ago. The girl accidentally fell asleep while reading. When she woke up, she had transmigrated into the book, becoming the spendthrift young lady, Willow. In the original story, Willow squandered money recklessly. Her father, who doted on his daughter, not only didn't stop her, but even borrowed from loan sharks to pay her debts. As a result, the family's fortune was squandered, and they were left with substantial debt. Debt collectors came to the house to cause trouble, saying that if the money wasn't repaid within 2 months, Willow would be taken as collateral. The mess the original Willow left behind now had to be cleaned up by her. Her father was filled with guilt. He kept apologizing to her. Willow suddenly spoke. Her parents instinctively cowered in fear. Unexpectedly, she smiled, a complete change from her usual spendthrift image. Back in her room, Willow was speechless. Her parents had reacted that way. Just how bad had the original Willow been? She sighed helplessly. Things had come to this, so she had to figure out how to get money. She looked at her glittering jewelry and her gorgeous dress. Looking around, so much money had been spent, there had to be quite a few valuable things. She opened drawers and wardrobes. Sure enough, they were full of luxury goods. Willow decided to keep only what she needed and sell the rest. But she wasn't familiar with the market here, so she had to ask the butler for help selling them. The butler was startled. He asked with a suspicious tone, "Miss, are you going to help pay off the debt?" Willow was puzzled. "Yes, why?" The butler froze, tears streaming down his face. He grasped her hand. "Miss, you've finally come to your senses." He had been a butler for 20 years, and this was the first time he had been so moved. He exclaimed, wanting to give her a hug. Unable to handle it, Willow slipped out for a walk. On the street, her steps were heavy. All she could think about was how to raise the money to repay the debt within 2 months. If only money would fall from the sky. She sighed heavily and walked forward. A piece of paper on the wall suddenly fell, sticking to her face. Willow angrily pulled it off. The next second, she froze. It was a missing person notice. The Duke's mansion was looking for a child named Raffi. Willow's eyes lit up. Raffi was the male lead in the book. It seemed the story had reached the point where he went missing. When she saw the reward amount, Willow turned and ran. Although she hadn't finished reading the novel, she still remembered this part. She arrived at the junkyard, panting, thinking about having the money to pay off her debts soon. She worked like a lion. She desperately rummaged through the filthy garbage. Rats, wild cats, stray dogs, all sorts of things were there. But she couldn't find a Raffi she was looking for. Just as she was feeling discouraged, there was a rustling sound behind her. She prepared to quietly lift the black cloth, doubting he would be in such a dirty place. The next second, she lifted it. Sure enough, inside was a bruised and battered child, trembling all over, huddled on the ground. Find a child in the trash. Don't throw him away. Clean him up and raise him. Maybe you'll get rich overnight. For the sake of getting rich overnight, the debt-ridden Willow came to the stinking junkyard, desperately searching for the book's male lead, Raffi. Finally, under a black cloth, she found a dirty little boy, murmuring "Mama." The black hair and red eyes were indeed the symbol of the Duke's family. Willow grinned wickedly. This was the boy she was looking for, and also her path to wealth. At this moment, Raffi kept whimpering. Willow sensed something was wrong. She reached out to touch his forehead. Sure enough, he had a high fever. She quickly picked him up and ran all the way home. Her parents looked bewildered. Returning home, without time to explain, she told them to immediately call a doctor. A short while later, Raffi was sound asleep. After an examination, the doctor declared him to be all right, just suffering from a cold brought on by malnutrition. He bowed and excused himself. On his way out, he muttered about Willow having squandered her family fortune, but that it shouldn't have led to a child starving. Willow didn't bother explaining. She was just relieved the child wasn't seriously ill. She gazed at the sleeping Raffi, thinking that he was indeed worthy of being the male lead. He looked so handsome, even after just having his face washed. Willow recalled how Raffi had ended up in this state. It seemed to be related to his father, Island. In the original book, Island had fallen in love with a woman while recuperating in the countryside. They had Raffi, but Island's father refused to allow them to marry because Raffi's mother was a commoner. It wasn't until his father's death that Island could finally marry her. But tragedy struck on their return journey. They were involved in a carriage accident, and only Raffi survived. He'd been wandering ever since, even sleeping in the junkyard. Thinking about this, Willow felt a pang of guilt. She had actually considered this orphan child a cash cow. How was she going to explain things to him when he woke up? But burdened by her debts, she consoled herself. She wouldn't see him again after receiving the reward money, so why should she care? Besides, the Duke in the book was very proper. Surely he would comfort the child. The Imperial Duke was weary. Duke Chester looked stern. "You say this child is my nephew." The man pointed to the child's black hair and red eyes, claiming it was proof enough. Chester's gaze turned icy, making the child tremble with fear. He curtly instructed the man to collect his reward and then ordered someone to bring the child a special juice. After drinking the juice, the boy's appearance instantly reverted. Chester slammed his fist on the table, his fury palpable. "This child is clearly yours. How dare you try to deceive me?" The man was terrified. He wasn't the first, nor the last, to try such a scam using magic potions. The Duke was prepared with an antidote. After dealing with the man, Chester collapsed into his chair. Dealing with these greedy people all day was giving him a headache. If only he knew where his real nephew was. Meanwhile, Willow stayed by Raffi's side, praying for his well-being. She was only 20 years old, yet she had a 5-year-old child with her, nearly giving her parents a heart attack. Willow explained that the child's name was Raffi and that the Duke's household was looking for him. Her parents breathed a sigh of relief. Willow was speechless. She was only 20, and yet there had been such a misunderstanding. She reassured her parents, explaining that Raffi was still sick and that she would return him to the Duke's household once he recovered. Her mother brought some clothes for Willow to dress Raffi in. They were Willow's childhood clothes, carefully preserved by her parents. Willow sighed. Such wonderful parents. Yet they had a spendthrift daughter like the original Willow. She pushed open the bedroom door. Raffi was peeking out from under the covers. Willow's eyes softened with concern. She asked him if he was feeling better, reaching out to touch his forehead. His fever seemed to have subsided. Raffi blinked his large eyes and called her mama. Willow froze, then quickly explained with a smile that she wasn't his mother. Tears welled up in Raffi's eyes. He burst into tears, asking where his mama and papa were. Willow's heart ached. She remembered from the book that Raffi had lost his memory due to the accident, even forgetting his mother's face. It seemed the trauma had been significant. Willow didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. She held Raffi tightly, gently rocking him and promising to take him to his family once he was better. Raffi stopped crying. Willow touched his forehead. "Your name is Raffi. Remember that, okay?" Raffi obediently nodded, wiping his tears. Suddenly, Willow noticed a foul odor. She quickly carried Raffi to the bathroom. She had only wiped his face earlier, and the stench of the junkyard still clung to him. She coaxed Raffi, telling him he needed to get clean so he could get better. She even put rubber duckies in the bathtub, but Raffi became visibly tense. He dipped his toe into the water and immediately screamed, clinging to Willow and trembling uncontrollably. Under Willow's gentle care, Raffi finally finished his bath, but his mood was still sour. He thought Willow was being mean for making him gurgle in the water and sulked, refusing to eat. Willow remained patient, using little games. Raffi instantly brightened, his unhappiness completely forgotten. Willow wondered what she was doing. She had planned to send him back as soon as he was healthy, after taking care of him briefly. But she remembered Raffi's fear during his bath, clearly indicating a past trauma involving water. He was only 5 years old and already carrying such baggage. Willow couldn't bring herself to be indifferent towards him. Besides, he was so adorable. How could she just leave him? Things had come to this. She just had to be careful not to get too attached. Meanwhile, the masked man was reprimanding his incompetent subordinates. "You bunch of useless fools. I'll give you 1 more month. Even if it's the child's corpse, bring him to me." The little cutie rescued from the trash heap was being spoiled rotten by her family. Raffi shyly hid behind Willow, softly greeting everyone with a hello. Willow's parents were instantly charmed. Who wouldn't love such a cute and beautiful child? Willow pushed Raffi forward, telling him these were her parents. Raffi looked back and forth curiously. His face lit up with excitement. "Why is there another slightly older father pointing at me? Do I look like Willow too?" Raffi muttered softly. "That one doesn't look like Willow at all. Is it okay to say that?" Willow responded with a laugh. "You can't call other people that. You have to call him Grandpa." At the dinner table, Raffi occasionally amused Willow's parents, further strengthening their bond. That night, Willow tucked Raffi into bed. As she was about to leave, Raffi suddenly grabbed her hand. Willow thought he was feeling unwell. Raffi looked nervous and upset, pleading with her not to go. Willow realized that having been alone in the junkyard, he must be scared, so she decided to sleep with him. Looking at the little one sleeping soundly, Willow worried. What would she do if she became attached? Over the next few days, Raffi had a wonderful time, but eventually, she had to return him to the Duke. Willow's parents were very reluctant to let him go, hugging Raffi tightly. Willow sighed, explaining that Raffi's family was still looking for him, and they must be worried. After boarding the carriage, Willow was lost in thought. She thought about returning Raffi and receiving the huge reward, but she also felt reluctant. The carriage pulled into the Duke's mansion, instantly stunning Willow. A huge garden, a magnificent residence, glittering gold decor. Even the butler was dazzlingly handsome. Willow was completely dumbfounded, her heart pounding nervously. She wondered if it was because the place was so grand that she couldn't help but feel intimidated. A moment later, Duke Chester arrived in the drawing room. Willow rose to greet him, but froze the next second. Although the Duke was described as incredibly handsome in the book, she had never seen anyone this handsome before. Willow couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, what a hottie." Realizing she had spoken her thoughts aloud, she quickly covered her mouth, praying no one had heard. But Raffi, never one to miss out on the fun, asked what hottie meant. The atmosphere instantly dropped to freezing. The situation became incredibly awkward. She had found a child and delivered him to his home, only to be treated like a con artist, all because she was a notorious spendthrift. Upon seeing Duke Chester, Willow had a moment of infatuation. She then curtsied and introduced herself, pointing to Raffi and saying, "This is the child you've been looking for." Raffi hesitated for a moment, then, bowing slightly, Raffi mumbled a greeting. Chester, however, was scrutinizing him intently. Willow felt irritated. "Black hair and red eyes. That he's obviously your family, isn't he? What are you staring at?" Chester then shifted his gaze to Willow. Willow felt a sense of dread. The truth was, when the butler announced Willow's arrival, Chester hadn't wanted to see her at all. Rumors of Willow's extravagant spending and squandering of her family fortune were widespread. He assumed she was after the reward money, picking up a random child and fabricating a story for financial gain. Chester loathed such deception and was determined not to let it slide. Looking at frail Raffi, Chester's anger flared. This con artist is deliberately starving the child to gain sympathy, he thought. "Are you Raffi?" Chester asked, bending down. Raffi nodded obediently and softly replied, "I am Waffy." Chester frowned. "It's definitely that woman's influence," he thought. He then questioned Willow, "Where did you find the child?" Willow hesitated. Finally, she decided to tell the truth. "I found him in a garbage dump." Now Chester was even more convinced that she was putting on a pitiful act for sympathy. He pressed further. Why was the child in such a place? Willow didn't know how to explain. She couldn't exactly tell him she was a transmigrator. Raffi suddenly spoke up, softly saying, "I don't remember because of an accident." Chester gritted his teeth. How cunning, he thought. She's told the child he has amnesia to avoid more detailed questioning. Willow was baffled. Why did this man keep glaring at her? The next moment, Chester leaned in close. "How can you guarantee this child is Raffi? He said he has amnesia. He doesn't even remember his own name. How can you be certain he's Raffi?" Faced with this barrage of accusations, Willow finally snapped. "Why are you asking me these questions? You're the one looking for a child with black hair and red eyes. I went through all the trouble to find someone, and now you're accusing me. How dare you?" Chester was taken aback. This con artist was surprisingly bold. Suspicion fueled Willow's rage. The two locked eyes, sparks flying. Raffi, seeing their confrontation, excitedly whispered encouragement. Just then, the butler entered the room, breaking the tense atmosphere. He pulled the Duke aside and whispered in his ear, explaining that they were out of the potion to verify identities, and it would take a month to restock. They couldn't immediately expose the con artist. Chester was annoyed. He strode back towards Willow and told her that the reward would have to wait a month due to the delay in obtaining the potion to verify hair and eye color. Willow finally realized she had been suspected of being a fraud all along. Chester explained, "Too many people use magic to alter children's hair and eye color. We have to be cautious." Willow understood the precaution, but treating her like a con artist without any proof was outrageous. She turned to leave with Raffi, saying they would be in touch once the potion was ready. But Chester stopped them. "Wait, leave the child here. The girl who found the Duke's nephew was suspected of being a con artist and was now being asked to leave the child and essentially cohabitate. Hearing Chester's demand to leave Raffi behind, Willow was stunned. Raffi, too, was scared and tense. Chester suspected Raffi wasn't the real deal. The child was so fragile and sensitive. How could she leave him here? Willow immediately refused. Chester, assuming it was about the money, assured her that the reward would be paid in full once Raffi's identity was confirmed. But that wasn't Willow's concern. She insisted on taking Raffi home. Chester was exasperated. I'm offering the child a better life. Why are you so insistent on taking him back? Willow felt insulted. Was he implying her home was inadequate? She looked down and asked Raffi if he wanted to stay. Raffi shook his head, saying he wanted to go back and see his grandparents. Willow looked at Chester triumphantly. See, Raffi wants to be with us. Seeing the argument escalating, the butler quickly intervened. Miss, taking the child back could put you in danger. After all, the Hilos family has many enemies. Willow froze. She remembered the original story, where many antagonists targeted the Hilos family and committed all sorts of crimes. If they find out about Raffi, it could be very dangerous. It could even put his kind family in danger. But she couldn't just abandon Raffi. But in Chester's eyes, Willow was a two-faced liar. He couldn't let the child be taken by a con artist. After a moment of thought, he suddenly proposed, "You and the child will stay here for a month." Willow was stunned. The butler was equally surprised. That evening, the butler arranged a room for Willow and informed her family. Willow wanted to go home to pack some belongings and asked the butler to arrange a carriage for early morning. Because Raffi was afraid to sleep alone, she had to leave before he woke up. The butler thought to himself, if Willow really was the con artist the Duke claimed, she was a truly remarkable actress. But Chester had instructed him to report on her meticulously. The butler couldn't understand why the Duke was so fixated on her. Night fell. Looking at the stars outside the window, Raffi reached out to grab them. When he couldn't, his eyes welled up with tears. Willow gazed at him tenderly. The stars twinkled in Raffi's eyes. They looked at each other for a moment, and Raffi exclaimed excitedly, "They really are there." His eyes sparkled. His sweet words made Willow's heart flutter. The next morning, Willow dozed in the carriage. She had gone home early that morning, and it had taken a lot of effort to convince her parents. She was utterly exhausted. As the carriage passed the market, Willow decided to go for a stroll. From magic tools to food, it had everything. After browsing around, Willow found something she liked. It was a crystal ball. Raffi loved stars, and she wanted to buy him a similar decoration. But just as she reached for it, a large hand covered hers. Looking up, she saw Chester staring back at her. Yesterday, they had been at each other's throats, and now they were practically rolling on the floor. Rewind to 1 hour earlier. In a room decorated with stars, Chester sat lost in thought. The butler entered and told him the carriage was ready. He was going out to meet someone, possibly a witness to his brother's accident. The butler reminded him to return early and not to buy any more star decorations at the market. Chester brushed him off and left. His brother had once told him how much Raffi loved stars. Every time he saw stars, he would smile with pure joy. His brother had said he wanted him to see his nephew smile. But he never imagined that the last time he saw his brother, he was happily talking about Raffi. He knew that even in heaven, his brother would still worry about his child. That's why he had to find Raffi. Passing the market, Chester still felt the urge to buy a star decoration. And that's how he ran into Willow, both reaching for the same crystal ball. In the bustling market, neither of them would let go. The shopkeeper found it amusing and chuckled, telling them it was a popular item, and this was the last one. Hearing this, they were even more determined. Both were determined to buy it for Raffi. Seeing grown adults fighting over a toy, passing children giggled. Willow had a clever idea. She pointed behind Chester and pretended to greet her butler. While he was distracted, she snatched the crystal ball. After paying, Willow was ecstatic, humming to herself. Chester couldn't believe it. You, who used to spend money so freely, are this happy over a toy. He was convinced it was all an act. Willow smiled and called out for him to hurry up. Chester remained unimpressed, believing her radiant smile was fake. Just as Willow turned back around, a runaway carriage suddenly barreled towards her. She had no time to react and squeezed her eyes shut. A hand shot out, pulling her back just in time. The carriage overturned. The driver rushed over to check on Willow, who slowly opened her eyes, seemingly unharmed. "You can get up now, if you're all right," Chester suddenly said. Willow quickly stood, realizing she was practically sitting on him. She recalled the carriage bearing down on her, leaving no time to react. She was unharmed thanks to him. Willow apologized and got up. Chester said he was fine and proceeded to move the obstructing goods. At that moment, Willow thought he was actually quite nice, despite his poor manners. Then she saw the injury on Chester's hand. Knowing it was from saving her, Willow immediately offered him money to bandage it. But Chester coldly refused. Willow was speechless and turned to help move the goods. Meanwhile, in a corner, someone was secretly watching them. The usually cold and venomous Duke was seemingly captivated by the girl's kindness. After leaving the market, Willow and Chester returned to the Duke's mansion together. She couldn't help but feel smug. Not only had she won the crystal ball, but she'd also made Chester pay for Raffi's necessities. She only regretted not going to a more expensive brand-name store. Suddenly, the carriage braked sharply. It turned out Chester's carriage had broken down. The driver suggested they share a carriage. Remembering Chester's earlier attitude, Willow was furious. Still, she asked the Duke perfunctorily, "Would you like to share a carriage with me?" As expected, Chester refused and told her to go ahead. This was exactly what Willow wanted. But the driver earnestly persuaded them to go together, explaining that the repairs would take a long time. Remembering the butler's instructions to return early, Chester hesitated, then agreed to share the carriage. Willow's expression changed. She thought, what bad luck. The atmosphere in the carriage was extremely awkward. Willow fumed inwardly. With so much luggage, he still insisted on sitting opposite her. It was suffocating, and with the carriage swaying, their legs kept bumping into each other. Chester was also exasperated, wondering if crossing his legs would help. But that just resulted in his legs pressing against Willow's. Not to be outdone, she shoved back hard with her knee. Chester wondered if she was pushing his leg on purpose. Willow thought, is he pushing back harder? They remained locked in this silent battle, like children fighting over territory. Suddenly, the carriage lurched, interrupting their struggle. Chester turned his head, pretending nothing had happened. Willow was trembling with anger. She forced herself to hold back her temper, deciding it was better to close her eyes and rest than argue with him. Watching Willow fall asleep instantly, Chester was taken aback. She had just been picking a fight, and now she was fast asleep. But he couldn't take his eyes off her. Perhaps it was her beautiful sleeping face. That captivated him. The next second, he was startled, reminding himself not to judge by appearances. His father had been like that, appearing incredibly gentle in public, but behind closed doors, he was abusive. He glanced at Willow, wondering if she was feigning sleep. But as the carriage jolted, her head hit the window with a thud. Chester was shocked. How could she still be asleep after hitting her head so hard? The carriage rolled over a stone, and Willow's head banged against the window again. Yet, she remained sound asleep. Chester watched, breaking out in a cold sweat. The next moment, he involuntarily reached out and gently cupped Willow's head. Holding the suddenly appearing hand, Willow slept even more soundly, her cheek rubbing against it. Chester didn't pull away. He just thought she was a strange woman. The boy, only 5 years old, lived in a garbage dump for a month. Now, although he's been brought home, he still feels insecure. He's constantly afraid of being abandoned. Meanwhile, inside the Duke's mansion, Raffi is running frantically, crying and shouting for Willow. The servants can't keep up. The butler, Lohan, learns that Raffi woke up and didn't see Willow, which is why he's like this. He finally understands why Willow left so early in the morning, seeing the carriage arrive at the entrance. Lohan hurries downstairs, thinking he needs to get Willow to comfort Raffi quickly. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Willow is sleeping, her head resting on Chester's hand. Lohan opens the carriage door. Chester quickly withdraws his hand and strides out of the carriage. Willow wakes up groggily, rubbing her sore head. Chester is annoyed. Why didn't it hurt before? Why is it hurting now? Just as he's about to enter the mansion, he's suddenly startled. Raffi darts out, running towards Willow with tearful eyes, scolding her for being a bad person and leaving him alone. Willow pats his back, soothing him. Lohan thinks she's good with children, but Chester frowns, saying that until their identities are confirmed, they still need to be watched carefully. They can't let their guard down. Back in the room, Raffi is still upset because he's afraid of being abandoned. Willow explains that she just went out to do some errands. Raffi's voice chokes, his body trembles, and tears keep falling. He says he's afraid Willow will leave him here, afraid of being left alone, afraid of being sent back to the garbage dump. Willow's heart aches. She hugs Raffi tightly, promising never to abandon him. Seeing Raffi gradually calm down, Willow takes out the crystal ball she bought. Look, if I was going to abandon Raffi, why would I buy him a present? Raffi happily accepts the crystal ball. Willow runs to draw the curtains, her mysterious manner making Raffi very curious. She presses the button on the crystal ball. Suddenly, light bursts forth, filling the entire room with twinkling stars. Willow tells Raffi that these are all stars for him, and that this is his home. He can stay here without worry. Raffi snuggles obediently and happily in Willow's arms, like a child nestled against their mother. But Willow is filled with guilt. She's about to leave him, yet she's made promises she can't keep. Inside a dark wooden cabin, a masked man is listening to his subordinates' report about Willow and Raffi. But it's all trivial. The masked man angrily kicks a piece of wood and orders the white-haired man behind him to deal with these incompetent fools. A moment later, the man removes his blood-stained mask. After the white-haired man finishes, his subordinate asks what the master will do next. His crimson eyes glint with murderous intent. I need to get a magical tool first. He is the esteemed Duke, yet he's suspected of killing his own brother. Looking at the information about his brother's car accident, Chester falls into deep thought. The butler says it doesn't seem like a simple accident. It's highly likely someone did it intentionally. Chester slams his fist on the desk, trembling with rage. Someone actually dared to do such a thing. Who are the suspects? The butler is a little nervous. We haven't identified anyone yet, unless the real young Master Raffi can manifest his red eyes, fury radiating from him. Chester rises abruptly, grabbing the information and heading to see the Knight Commander. He tells the butler to bring Ward along. On the way to the Knight's headquarters, Chester tries to compose himself. He can't understand who would have a grudge against his brother. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out. Don't you think the Duke is terrifying? I heard he killed his own brother for power. Chester hid behind a tree, suppressing his rage. I've heard these rumors before. He vowed to find the true culprit. A moment later, Chester found Sane, the captain of the Knights. He ordered him to assemble an elite search party immediately. Sane was puzzled, assuming it was to retrieve Chester Empire intelligence. He was utterly astonished. Chester instructed him to uncover the truth. Just then, the butler appeared with Ward. Chester told Sane to bring him along. He would be a great help in the search. Having given his orders, all he could do was wait for news. He went to the garden and found a shady spot to sit and try to calm down. But he barely sat down when he heard Willow and Raffi playing, the noise irritating him further. He was about to get up and move when a ball landed at his feet. The next second, Willow emerged from the bushes. Seeing Chester scowl, she apologized awkwardly, preparing to grab the ball and disappear. But then she noticed the injury on Chester's hand. Willow felt a pang of guilt. It was from her dream yesterday, and he still hadn't treated it. She leaned closer and asked, "Shouldn't you bandage that?" Chester looked indifferent. Willow sternly moved closer. "You'll get tetanus," she warned. Chester, flustered by her closeness, said he could handle it himself. Willow wouldn't have it. If he got tetanus, she'd be blamed. She turned and called for a maid to bring the first aid kit. Chester, annoyed, tried to slip away, but she caught him. Willow didn't want to stay there either, but she had to at least make sure he treated the wound. A moment later, the maid arrived with the kit. Willow beamed. "Here's the first aid kit. You should treat it now." Chester sighed. He held out his hand. Willow paused. A mischievous grin spread across her face. "Oh, you don't think I'm going to do it for you, do you?" She set down the kit and walked away. Chester covered his reddening face. How careless of me. The proud and noble Duke now had embarrassing information in the hands of this mischievous girl. That night at bedtime, Raffi obediently changed into his pajamas, looking for praise. Willow obliged, clapping and complimenting him. Raffi snuggled into bed and exchanged goodnights with Willow, but he couldn't sleep soundly. Hesitantly, he asked, "When are we going home?" Willow explained that this was Raffi's home now. Raffi, looking distressed, said it wasn't. He missed his grandparents. Willow stammered, "When you're big and strong, you'll see them again soon." Although Raffi didn't ask any more questions, he clearly wasn't happy. The next day, at breakfast, he poked at his food, looking distracted. He sighed occasionally. Willow realized her little one wasn't easily fooled anymore, so she decided to distract him. "Let's go out," she suggested. "There's a bakery and a toy store." Raffi's face lit up. He wanted to go immediately, but Willow almost forgot. They needed the homeowner's permission to leave. Standing outside Chester's office, Willow doubted he'd agree. He even had her watched in the garden, sometimes by more than one person. Just as she was worrying, the butler arrived to see the Duke. Willow decided to follow him in. As she expected, Chester said it was too dangerous and refused. But Willow had already promised Raffi. Chester ignored her. At this moment, Willow really wanted to punch him. She saw the treated wound on his hand. Suddenly, An idea flashed in her mind. Oh, it's already bandaged. The butler, deeply concerned, inquired about the Duke's injury. Chester awkwardly waved his hand, dismissing it as just a scrape, and told the butler to get back to work. Willow noticed his embarrassment. She was just about to bring up the misunderstanding from the previous day about bandaging his hand, when Chester, realizing something was amiss, abruptly stood up. Oh, weren't you going out for a stroll? Just take a few more guards with you. Willow's plan worked. She waved goodbye greedily and left. Chester trembled with anger, thinking, as expected of a con artist, using blackmail to force me to let her go out. Raffi, overjoyed, flew past the toy store. The little guy's eyes lit up instantly. He liked this, he wanted that too. Willow panicked. Looking at her practically empty purse, her face darkened. Having spent a fortune, she only had some small change left. The word poor was practically etched on her forehead. Then she heard a candy vendor calling out prices that weren't too expensive. Willow could still afford that. Raffi, holding the candy, jumped up and down with joy. Willow was very satisfied. Thankfully, a single piece of candy could make him so happy. Just then, she heard shouts of "Stop, thief!" from behind her, and the thief was running towards them. The first time taking her little one out, and she encountered two strange people. It felt like she'd fallen into a villain's trap. Seeing the thief suddenly charge towards Willow, the guards quickly shielded her. One of them even chased after the thief. Before Willow could react, a noblewoman also ran past, panting and collapsing on the ground. The guards went to check on her. Willow, recalling what had just happened, was still shaken. Then Raffi clenched his little fists. If the thief uncle comes back, I'll protect Wiwi. Before he finished speaking, the thief actually doubled back and was running towards him again. This frightened Willow badly. She quickly scooped Raffi into her arms. The next second, the thief tripped over his own feet and fell flat on his face in front of them. Willow struggled to suppress her laughter, thinking, why did he suddenly start performing? Raffi, seeing the bag on the ground, quickly ran to pick it up. Willow, terrified, immediately pulled the little one back. The thief took the opportunity to slip away. Just then, the noblewoman came to Willow's side and thanked her. Then she quickly snatched her bag back. Willow was speechless, thinking, she says thank you, but her actions are anything but polite. The next second, the noblewoman pulled out a bracelet, saying it was a token of gratitude, and stuffed it into Willow's hand. Then she hurriedly ran off. Willow stood there, stunned, unable to react. She looked at the gem-encrusted bracelet. Recalling the recent events, she felt something was strange. The woman didn't thank the guards who helped her, but gave a gift to Willow instead. Could it be a cursed object? Did she put on that whole show just to get rid of it? Raffi tugged at her hand to continue their stroll. He skipped into a luxury goods store. Willow, however, was preoccupied with how to deal with the strange bracelet. Seeing his favorite star, Raffi was completely transfixed. The shopkeeper said there was only one of those band left. Unfortunately, Willow didn't have enough money. Seeing how much Raffi loved it, she felt a pang of guilt. Just as she was worrying, a thought suddenly occurred to her. A moment later, the two walked out of a pawn shop. Willow had pawned the strange bracelet. Now, she could not only buy the band for Raffi, but also spend the rest of the money. She shouted, offering free drinks to everyone on the street. Money from questionable sources should be spent quickly. Meanwhile, the thief and the noblewoman were reporting the day's events to a masked figure. Learning that the bracelet had been pawned, the masked figure trembled with rage. Make those two return it immediately. That's an expensive magical artifact. What a vain woman. Someone gives her a gift, and she just sells it. The masked figure muttered incessantly. The white-haired man behind him hesitantly spoke. Rather than letting that woman use the magical artifact, wouldn't it be better if we used it ourselves? After all, we need to monitor the situation inside the Duke's mansion. The child she found in the trash. Dot is now living in the luxurious Duke's mansion. In the beautiful garden, Willow and Raffi were enjoying afternoon tea while Chester watched them. The butler reported to the Duke, "So far, we haven't found anything strange about Willow. She's been taking good care of the child, and not long ago, that she sold all of her luxury items. She doesn't seem like the spendthrift everyone says she is." The butler wondered if the rumors were exaggerated. Chester knew, however, that even absurd rumors, when repeated enough, can be taken as truth. He had experienced this himself. After a moment of contemplation, he decided he couldn't let his guard down. He ordered the butler to continue watching her, no matter what. With that, he turned and left. The butler was puzzled. He felt that no matter how much he observed, he wouldn't find anything wrong. Meanwhile, Willow and Raffi were playing hide-and-seek. Raffi's cute little feet peeked out. Willow pretended not to see. She turned to look elsewhere. Raffi's heart pounded nervously. He decided to run further away, but he didn't know where to hide. Just then, he bumped into the butler and quickly hugged his leg, asking him to hide him. The butler, amused and exasperated, carried the little boy to the kitchen. Raffi quickly jumped down and ran forward. The cook, who was cleaning, was startled. He had just mopped the floor, worried that the little boy would get hurt. He tried to stop him, but ended up falling hard. The butler chased after Raffi, but awkwardly bumped into a table. Raffi stopped, confused. The butler, luckily catching himself with his hand, smiled and said he was fine. Before he finished speaking, a bag of flour on the table suddenly spilled, instantly turning him into a snowy figure. Raffi touched him all over, as if he had discovered a new world. The two adults, still playful, joined in the fun. Meanwhile, Willow was searching everywhere for Raffi. She had just heard him, but now he was nowhere to be seen. She wandered into the study. After searching without finding him, she turned to leave. Suddenly, she froze. Her eyes were drawn to a book. She struggled to bring over a ladder. Preparing to climb up and retrieve the book, Willow thought, "This book is practically written for me. How to turn 10,000 into 10 billion. Given the Duke's personality, he definitely wouldn't buy a useless book. If I follow what it says, maybe I really can get rich. Paying off my debts would be a piece of cake." But just as Willow was daydreaming, her foot slipped. She lost her balance and fell from the ladder. She braced herself, expecting pain, but found it didn't hurt at all. It was actually rather comfortable. She slowly opened her eyes. A second later, she was stunned. Hoping to get the secret book, the girl climbed a 100-meter-high ladder, only to lose her footing and fall right into the Duke's arms. So close to Chester's handsome face, Willow's heart pounded. The next second, she snapped back to reality, scolding herself internally. Are you crazy? No matter how handsome he is, you can't fall for him. Willow quickly struggled out of Chester's arms. She coughed a couple of times to cover her embarrassment, then politely expressed her gratitude. But Chester didn't react, just stared at his own hands. Willow thought, is he going to ignore me? She realized she had interrupted his reading and quickly apologized, explaining that she was there looking for Raffi. After that, she put the book down. She hurriedly excused herself and left the study. Chester remained frozen in place, still staring intently at his hands. What he was actually thinking was, for a con artist, she's certainly a bit too thin. And the image of Willow kept flashing through his mind. Chester was annoyed. Why was he thinking about that woman's face? He glanced at the book Willow had left behind. It was about turning 10,000 into 10 billion. He found the content ridiculous and had meant to throw it away. Remembering how excited Willow had been upon seeing the book, Chester couldn't help but laugh. Meanwhile, Willow was making a quick escape. She felt incredibly embarrassed and told herself that her racing heart wasn't due to attraction, but simply the shock of the fall. Just then, she heard laughter coming from behind her. It sounded like Raffi, and he seemed to be in the kitchen. Willow pushed open the door and was instantly dumbfounded. Two adults and one small child were having a blast. A short while later, Raffi, exhausted, had fallen asleep. After thanking the butler and the chef, Willow carried Raffi away. Looking at Raffi's adorable face, Willow couldn't bring herself to be angry, even though he had made a mess of the kitchen. Night fell. The Duke's mansion appeared peaceful, but suddenly a sound came from the trees. It was a small white cat. Seeing a patrolling knight approaching, the white cat leaped from the tree. The knight, spotting the cat, felt a surge of affection and moved forward to take the cat to its owner. But in the next second, the cat's meow became strange. The ruby on its chest began to glow. The knight froze, eyes wide. Suddenly, a blinding white light illuminated the night sky. In that instant, the white cat vanished, leaving only the knight standing there. His expression was serious, his eyes closed. He reached up and touched the ruby on his chest. His opened eyes radiated a murderous, spiritual energy. The handsome, wealthy, and arrogant Duke is actually trying to steal a dog's nutritionist. What's going on? Inside the training grounds, the knights were training. Chester walked in hurriedly, calling for the knight commander, Sane. He wanted to report on the results of the various investigations. Sane lowered his head guiltily. Despite their thorough searching these past few days, they hadn't found anything. He expected the Duke to be furious, but the opposite happened. Chester thanked them for their hard work and told the search party to get some rest. Sane was surprised and offered to expand the search area, but Chester disagreed, telling them to go back and await further instructions. He knew that if even the search party couldn't find any clues, it meant the enemy was well prepared. Just then, his dog, Ward, appeared, wagging its tail. It nestled in Chester's arms, nuzzling him affectionately. Ward had been working hard with the search party recently. Chester instructed the butler to have the kitchen prepare a gourmet meal. Meanwhile, in a corner, a certain someone had a strange expression on his face. When anyone came near, he quickly resumed his normal demeanor. His companion informed him that today's mission had been changed. He was no longer responsible for Miss Willow's safety. Upon hearing this, his face fell, clearly disappointed. After leaving the training grounds, Chester took Ward for a walk. Worried that little Raffi might be scared, he kept the dog on a leash to prevent it from running off. But if Raffi is confirmed to be his nephew, Chester will definitely introduce them. Ward was raised by him and his brother. They grew up together. His brother, in heaven, would surely want Ward to meet his son. Back at the mansion, Chester left the dog and went to fetch his meal. Just as he reached the dining room door, he saw Willow and Raffi. Seeing them together so warmly, Chester paused and thought. The dining room felt unfamiliar. It used to be so empty. Deep down, he envied this harmonious scene. Not wanting to disturb them, he turned to leave, but Willow noticed the Duke. "Are you here for dinner, Your Grace?" No, chiste esta mered. Willow thought, if it's no, it's no. Why so nervous? Just then, the chef, carrying dessert, saw the Duke and announced that his special raw chicken meal was ready. Willow was taken aback. Such unique taste. No wonder he was so nervous. Not wanting to interrupt his meal, she prepared to leave with Raffi. Looking at the steak on Raffi's plate, Chester realized Willow hadn't eaten much, focused on the child. At that moment, the chef brought the prepared raw chicken. Chester took it, about to leave, when Willow suddenly reappeared, warning him that raw meat wasn't good for his health and that he needed to live a long life, especially since he had to take care of Raffi. Chester was completely confused, not understanding what she meant. Willow pointed at the plate. It's best to cook the meat. She then turned and slipped away. Chester stood there, realizing Willow had misunderstood. He burst out laughing. He found her increasingly amusing. The usually proud and aloof woman had just laughed very loudly. The head chef had glimpsed it and was telling his colleague, who refused to believe him. The butler entered, interrupting their gossip. Curious, he asked what they were discussing. The chef explained that the head chef claimed to have seen the Duke laughing. Clutching a carrot, the head chef angrily insisted he wasn't lying. Just now, when the Duke came to get his meal, he said, "I heard it. I peeked, and it was definitely the Duke laughing," the head chef stated seriously. The butler found it hard to believe, but the atmosphere in the mansion has been less cold lately. Meanwhile, in the garden, Raffi was happily bouncing around. Willow felt overwhelmed. Children were so energetic after meals. Suddenly, Raffi was on the ground, rolling around in the grass. Willow was startled and rushed over to check for injuries. Raffi, covered in dirt, giggled and ran off again. Seeing him so happy, Willow let him be. As Raffi ran further away, she followed behind. Suddenly, Raffi yelled Willow. Sensing something was wrong, Willow ran towards him. She found Raffi in tears, trembling and paralyzed with fear. Willow was equally shocked. A vicious dog stood before them, growling menacingly. She told Raffi not to move, to stay put, and that she would be right there. She had a feeling that the slightest movement would provoke the dog. Just then, the dog started to edge closer, growling. Raffi grew more terrified, tears streaming down his face. "No, don't come closer. Stay away." The vicious dog bared its teeth. Raffi was in imminent danger. The shameless beast opened its jaws wide. Willow immediately rushed towards the rope, quickly scooping Raffi into her arms. Just in the nick of time, a shout rang out, "No." Chester, carrying a plate of food, hurried out, concerned about their well-being, and grabbed the dog's leash. Willow was surprised by the Duke's sudden appearance. Chester apologized profusely, explaining that he had left Ward there waiting for him, unaware they would be in the garden. Willow was too breathless to speak, focused on comforting the frightened Raffi. The next moment, she collapsed to the ground. Seemingly overwhelmed by the stress, she appeared completely drained. Chester immediately rushed to her side, concerned. Willow shakily pushed herself up, turning to ask if Raffi was hurt. Raffi, wiping his tears, said he was fine. He then looked up at Chester. "I'm all right, Your Grace. You don't need to worry." Chester was stunned for a moment. Then he frowned. "I was asking if you were hurt." Once suspected of being a swindler, she was now being doted on by the Duke. After being frightened by the dog, Willow collapsed weakly to the ground. Chester suddenly shouted, "I'm asking if you're hurt." Willow was taken aback. She wondered why he was angry with her. Hearing the commotion, the butler hurried over, asking what had happened. Willow, seemingly unconcerned, laughed and said she had just fallen. Chester asked if she could stand. She tried to exert herself, but found she had no strength. "I don't think I can get up." Chester's face darkened instantly. Raffi also started crying with worry. Chester scooped up Raffi and handed him to the butler. The butler comforted Raffi. "His Grace is just going to help Miss Willow up." But the next moment, Chester lifted Willow into his arms and ordered the butler to fetch a doctor immediately. A short while later, the doctor arrived at Willow's room. After an examination, he declared that there was nothing serious, just a slight sprain. A cold compress and a few days of rest would see her fully recovered. Willow told them they could leave, assuring them she was fine. The doctor bowed and excused himself, but Chester remained, sitting on the edge of the bed. Willow was a little exasperated. She thought he was rather clueless. She clearly wanted him to leave as well. She recalled how she had fallen on him before, and how he had caught her when she fell from the ladder. Now she had fallen on the lawn. Every time, she made a fool of herself in front of him. He had even carried her twice now. Remembering the looks on everyone's faces, Willow felt incredibly embarrassed. Then Chester suddenly spoke. "I'm not sorry." Willow was puzzled. "Why are you apologizing, Your Grace?" Chester looked down guiltily. He explained that he hadn't secured Ward's leash properly, and that was why she had been hurt. Willow finally understood that the imposing dog was called Ward. She said it was all right, since Raffi wasn't hurt, and Ward hadn't meant to do it. Willow continued to smile. After a moment, Chester asked her what she wanted as compensation. Willow laughed. "Buy me a mansion, then." It was meant to be a joke, but Chester took it seriously. He asked her what areas she preferred, what style and color she liked. Willow waved her hands dismissively, explaining that she was only joking. But if she didn't ask for something, Chester wouldn't let it go. So she said, "Have Ward meet us and apologize in person." Chester was very surprised. He hadn't expected this supposed swindler to be so magnanimous. Leaving the room, he found Raffi at the door, struggling to see Willow. Chester hugged him and comforted him. "Raffi, Willow is all right. She'll be better soon, but you need to be quiet so she can rest." Raffi obediently agreed and ran towards the room to see the Duke. His clothes were a bit dirty. The butler knew he had been too worried to notice such things, so he couldn't help but ask, "Are you this worried about Miss Willow?" Chester was taken aback. Remembering how anxious he had just been, he was speechless. He quickly changed the subject, asking the butler to find a way to get a magic key to quickly identify Raffi's lineage, because he had a strange premonition that he might have misunderstood. Willow had always been concerned about the master's servant. Just how repulsive was she? Ever since Willow was injured saving Raffi, the people in the mansion had started gossiping. Some said Willow was putting on an act, while others said Raffi was the true young master. A maid named Gina suddenly spoke up. "That woman is either after money or trying to seduce the Duke. A noble lady would never go to the garbage dump and just happen to find a child there. Do you think that's possible?" The others agreed, finding her words reasonable. Gina, full of confidence, declared that the woman's lies would soon be exposed. Just then, the headmaid appeared. The maids quickly dispersed, leaving only Gina, who pretended to stay in the kitchen to help. She pretended to kindly help make the soup, but inwardly cursed Willow. "How dare you steal my man? If you get in my way again, don't blame me for being ruthless." Meanwhile, Willow was exasperated. Ever since she had fainted, Raffi had been by her bedside, not allowing her to move. Even if she was thirsty and wanted water, Raffi would help her. However, the process was a bit lengthy, as the little one would always fidget with her hands and feet, even after pouring the water. He even insisted on personally helping her, even though she didn't need to move a finger. It had to be said, this little one was truly thoughtful. After Raffi was done, he nestled in Willow's arms, telling her not to get hurt again. Smelling the milky scent on the little one, Willow felt her mood improve. She longed to hold him like this forever. But after a month, she would have to leave the Duke's mansion. She would have to part with Raffi. Thinking back on the past few days, Willow felt increasingly reluctant, not just for Raffi, but also for her personal maid, Tia, the butler, Luo Hao, and even the eccentric Chester. Seeing Willow frown, Raffi poked her. "Ouch. Willow, do you have wrinkles?" Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was Tia bringing dinner. Seeing Willow get out of bed to eat, Raffi looked a little annoyed, saying he could feed her. Willow quickly started eating, thinking to finish before the little one could feed her. After taking a sip of the soup, her face darkened. It was incredibly salty, but this was perfect. This way, she wouldn't miss the food here. Night fell, and the Duke's mansion was quiet. A knight controlled by the villain secretly entered the basement. He took the ruby from his chest, and a magic ball floated in the air, emitting a voice. Hayizi, report the recent situation to us. The knight bowed slightly. The child bears the Duke's features, but his identity hasn't been confirmed yet. We're waiting for the magic potion to be finished. I see. Continue monitoring them. Try to stay close to them. Willow had merely fainted, but the little one had quarantined her for 14 days. Finally seeing the light of day again, Willow was comfortably enjoying the sunshine. Tia, the maid, looked curious, as if there was something in the sky. Willow smiled and explained that she was just happy to see the sun after so long. Tia leaned in and whispered, young Master Raffi has been guarding you. Hasn't left the room for a moment. It must have been hard on you. Willow looked exasperated. She complained that Raffi and the Duke were cut from the same cloth, stubborn as mules, and that she felt like she'd been in prison. It felt wonderful to finally feel the breeze and sunshine. The fresh air was invigorating, but the next moment, a chilly gust of wind swept through. Willow, thinly dressed, shivered. Tia offered to fetch her shawl, but she insisted on getting it herself, wanting to move around a bit. After putting on the shawl, she remembered to grab a jacket for Raffi. As she walked through the hall, Willow was filled with emotion. She used to get lost frequently because the mansion was so large, but now she was much more accustomed to it. She had actually grown fond of the place. At this rate, she worried she might make it her permanent home. On her way back to the garden, she ran into Chester. Chester, walking Ward, approached her and inquired about her health. Seeing Ward, Willow greeted him warmly. Chester asked her to wait a moment, saying that Ward had something for her. A moment later, Ward appeared, holding a flower in his mouth, looking slightly awkward as he came before her. Willow was quite surprised. She picked up the flower and thanked Ward. The dog seemed to respond in kind. With Chester's permission, Willow carefully reached out and gently stroked Ward's head. They had made up. Receiving a flower from the dog put Willow in a great mood, but she knew it was all thanks to Chester's training. He hadn't ignored her request for an apology. This surprised Willow. He was so thoughtful, and his expression had softened considerably. Willow stared at Chester, transfixed. She waited for him to say something. Then, realizing she was being too obvious, she quickly stood up, thanked him, and hurried away, leaving Chester standing there, exchanging glances with Ward. Recalling Willow's intense gaze, Chester's face flushed crimson. On the surface, he was a proud and noble duke, but secretly, he was turning into a peeping Tom. That day, while Willow was feeding Raffi, Chester was peeking in at the dining room door. The chef, passing by, greeted him cheerfully, startling him. He angrily explained that he was just passing by and quickly slipped away. From then on, wherever Willow appeared, Chester could be seen lurking nearby, always hiding in some corner. This behavior infuriated Willow. She thought, this is clearly surveillance. One afternoon, Willow was playing with Raffi in the garden. She was quite annoyed by this ongoing situation. Tia, seeing her sighing, asked what was wrong. Willow leaned in and whispered for her to take a peek behind the shrubbery. Tia glanced over and was shocked to see Chester. Willow was furious. She said the Duke had been constantly watching her lately. Tia was even more surprised. Willow sighed. He must still suspect I'm a liar. He's watching me because he's afraid I'll hurt Raffi. But Tia disagreed. With so many servants around, why would His Grace need to do the surveillance himself? And who would be so obvious about it? Maybe he has something he wants to say, or maybe he wants to get closer to young Master Raffi. Willow thought that was possible and decided to ask him directly. Meanwhile, Chester was bewildered. He didn't understand what he was doing either. He was just thinking about how to get closer to them when the butler suddenly appeared. His secret thoughts exposed, Chester wished he could crawl into a hole. He explained that he was just resting after a walk, but his face flushed crimson. He immediately turned and said he wanted to continue his walk. He ended up bumping right into Willow. Chester felt incredibly awkward, regretting not staying hidden in the tree. Willow, with a bright smile, asked if he wanted to play together. Chester nervously began to speak, then suddenly turned serious, declaring that was absolutely impossible. This confused the butler, who was watching from the side. Willow was equally puzzled. Then why are you always looking over here? Don't you want to play with Raffi? Chester declared self-righteously that he wasn't looking over. He was just taking a walk on his own property. Willow was speechless, thinking, I saw you. You're clearly spying on us. The two instantly began to bicker again. The butler, fidgeting uncomfortably, quickly stepped in to interrupt. Just then, a small hand landed on Chester's arm. He looked down to see Raffi beaming up at him, inviting him to play. Chester froze, a little flustered. Raffi's large, innocent eyes were disarming. He reached out to pick Raffi up, but Willow suddenly spoke. "Raffi, come here. His Grace is too busy to play with us." A flicker of something crossed Chester's face. "Of course I'm not too busy. Let's play." Willow was exasperated. "But you just said you didn't want to." Chester, picking Raffi up, said, "But the child wants to." For Raffi's sake, Willow relented. Watching them play together, it looked just like a family of three. One moment, he was incredibly serious. The next, he was playing happily with the child. He was the epitome of its son to a duke. Back in the house, Raffi enthusiastically pushed open the door and invited Chester inside, wanting to show him his treasure. But Chester declined, saying he had to get back to work. Raffi's eyes immediately welled up with tears, thinking Chester didn't want to play with him anymore. Then Willow, standing behind him, suddenly spoke. "Why not? The child wants you to." Chester glared at Willow, then, ignoring her, said, "All right, I'll play with you a little longer." Chester, holding Raffi's hand, walked inside. Willow followed. She hadn't wanted to let him in, but for Raffi's sake, she relented. Raffi took out a crystal ball and showed it to Chester. "This is my treasure. Isn't it pretty?" Chester froze. Wasn't this the item they had been fighting over at the market? Raffi said it was his favorite thing. Willow suddenly spoke, and Chester fell into deep thought. He remembered his brother telling him that his nephew also loved stars. Whenever he saw stars, he would smile happily. Looking at Raffi's beaming face, Chester was lost in thought. Willow, noticing this, wondered if he was thinking about what she had said. "Why can't you let go of your reservations and just get close to him? It would give me peace of mind when I leave." Thinking this, she decided to take matters into her own hands. "By the way, Your Grace, Raffi is very caring. He protected me when I was injured, and he sings very well, too. Isn't that right?" Chester was a little taken aback. Willow put the crystal ball aside. "Raffi, let's sing a song for your uncle." Raffi's face lit up with excitement. "Okay, let's sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." Willow couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph. She wanted Raffi's cuteness to melt Chester's heart and make him dote on the child. Raffi clasped his hands together and sang the song with childlike innocence. Chester listened quietly, a smile slowly spreading across his face. Seeing his expression, Willow felt her plan was working. So, she decided to join Raffi in singing, hoping to further her plan. But the next moment, Chester's smile faded, because his eyes were fixed on Willow, and he kept blinking. He thought there was something wrong with his eyes. He rubbed his eyes repeatedly. Willow, oblivious to his inner turmoil, hoped he would praise Raffi. But Chester just frowned. "What's wrong, Your Grace? Why aren't you saying anything?" Willow forced a smile. Chester stared at her wide-eyed. Looking at Willow, shimmering in the starlight, he felt a strange flutter in his chest. He clenched his fists, trying to suppress the feeling, and thought about leaving quickly. Then abruptly lifting his head, he snapped, "You sing really well," and rushed out of the room. Willow and Raffi were startled. Raffi clung to Willow, upset. He thought his singing was so bad that it had angered Chester. Willow quickly comforted Raffi. At that moment, she wanted to tear Chester apart. Meanwhile, Chester fled, but Willow's words kept echoing in his mind. Just then, the butler ran into him and asked if he was feeling unwell. "Yes, the training grounds," Chester blurted out, suddenly looking up. He rushed off, needing to channel his turbulent emotions. A short while later, a pink carriage arrived at the Duke's mansion. A girl jumped out. She was dressed in finery and wore a bright smile. The girl burst into the mansion. She yelled, "Brother." The servants tried to tell her the Duke wasn't in, but she ignored them and ran upstairs. Willow and Raffi were eating in the dining room. Hearing a clatter from the kitchen, Willow wondered who it was. Tia told her it was a young lady named Kay. The next moment, the girl appeared in the doorway. They stared at each other, the atmosphere slightly awkward. But the girl's laughter quickly broke the tension. Willow pondered. She had read about Kay in the book, but couldn't remember the context. "Is this little Raffi? I've finally found you." Kay squealed. Willow was startled. The black hair and red eyes. "He's definitely a member of the Duke's family," Kay said, leaning closer. Raffi, frightened, ran to Willow and clung to her. Seeing that she had scared him, Kay quickly apologized. Willow reassured Raffi that Kay wasn't a bad person. Then, Kay asked curiously, "But who are you?" Willow was about to answer, but Kay excitedly interrupted, you're Raffi's nanny. Seeing her personality, Willow finally remembered who she was. The book described her as the only daughter of Count He-shu. Her father and Chester's father were good friends, and their families often visited each other. Their children were also close. That's why Kay called Chester brother. Seeing her in person, Willow thought she seemed frivolous and a bit naive, and doubted she would truly treat Raffi like a younger brother. Kay tilted her head. Wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. Nannies aren't this young and beautiful. Willow's mood instantly brightened, so she introduced herself. Hearing her name, Kay exclaimed, you're the extravagant queen. Then, realizing her rudeness, she quickly apologized. My father told me to mind my manners. I'm so sorry, Jelly sister. Willow blinked. The next moment, a small teddy bear popped out. Raffi was instantly delighted. Willow was equally surprised, her eyes fixed on the small bag. Kay, noticing her interest, took the bag off. Do you like it, sister? Please take it. Willow initially refused. Kay pressed it in her hands and whispered, whatever you want, this bag can make it appear. Willow was shocked, thinking she could conjure money. But Kay added, accept anything that benefits you directly. Willow was a little disappointed, but the bag would be great for playing with Raffi, so she accepted it. Meanwhile, at the training grounds, flashes of steel filled the air. To vent his emotional turmoil, Chester was training with a furious intensity. The butler handed him a towel, advising him to go easy on himself. Chester ignored him and asked what he wanted. The butler stammered, saying that Miss Kay had arrived. Chester froze. Hearing that Kay was with Willow, he was instantly shocked. He turned his head sharply. Why are you telling me this now? Go and see. The Duke, experiencing his first crush, thought he was having mental problems. Learning that Kay was with Willow, Chester hurried back to the mansion. He worried Kay would reveal his embarrassing past. Meanwhile, in Willow's room, occasional giggles could be heard. Kay was chatting animatedly with Willow. Jalicis. Do you know what the Duke's nickname is? Willow paused for a moment, thinking, cold-blooded, ill-mannered. Willow couldn't think of anything else. Kay said mysteriously, it's annoying mouth. Willow burst out laughing. Raffi was bewildered, not understanding what they found so funny. Being with Kay felt like being with a close friend to Willow. It had been a long time since she'd laughed so freely. Suddenly, Chester knocked, startling them both. I'm so sorry to interrupt your conversation. Chester pushed open the door. Seeing him flushed and breathing heavily, Willow was puzzled. Chester avoided her gaze, quickly turning to Kay. What are you doing here? If you have business, let's go to the drawing room. Willow was bewildered, wondering if he was angry. Had he overheard them talking about his nicknames? After greeting Willow, Kay left with Chester. Raffi tugged on Willow's skirt. Why didn't Uncle greet me? Did I do something wrong? No, of course not. Willow quickly comforted Raffi. She thought Chester was being annoying, upsetting Raffi again. In the drawing room, Kay fidgeted, explaining she was just stopping by. Chester's expression was cold. You didn't say anything unnecessary, did you? Kay startled, nervously avoiding his gaze. And no, why would I say anything bad about brother? Chester paled. Kay quickly changed the subject, asking if Raffi had been found. Chester sighed, saying they hadn't confirmed his identity yet. They were waiting to use the magic key. Kay said earnestly, I believe Jelly Sis. She's a good person. Even when I said something rude, she forgave me, and she even chatted with me. Chester had a headache listening to her chatter. Kay continued cheerfully, so you should trust her. Besides, she's very pretty. That's true, Chester blurted out. Time seemed to freeze. The next second, both of them exclaimed simultaneously. Wait, brother, what did you just say? What did I say? Kay stared wide-eyed. I just said Jelly Sis is pretty. You agreed. Chester immediately feigned annoyance. How could I say such nonsense? Relieved that he'd brushed it off, he let out a breath, but his heart was still racing. He felt his symptoms worsening. Even when he saw Willow just now, she seemed to glow. That's why he left so quickly. Chester suspected he had a mental problem. Suddenly, he slammed his fist down. He decided to see a doctor to find out what was wrong with him. If you had a magic bag, what would you want to conjure? Raffi was overjoyed, his arms full of snacks and toys. Willow had conjured them all from the magic bag. Raffi blinked his big eyes, indicating he wanted more. Willow explained with a smile that she could only conjure 3 bags at a time and needed a break. Looking at the mountain of toys and snacks, Raffi was satisfied. Willow told him to pick out his favorites and share the rest with others. I'll pick some to give to Tia, Raffi replied obediently. Seeing Raffi so well-behaved, Willow was pleased. Staring intently at the bag in her hand, she was glad she'd learned how to use it beforehand. But now she was exhausted. Willow was exhausted after a night of playing with magic. Her eyes could barely stay open as she collapsed onto the bed. She wanted to lie down and rest for a while, but she couldn't fall asleep and leave Raffi alone. But the next second, she was fast asleep. Raffi played by himself for a bit, but he soon grew bored. He turned to look for Willow, but heard snoring. Carefully, he crept closer. He wanted to make sure she was really sleeping. Looking at Willow's sleeping face, Raffi frowned. He wanted to wake Willow up, but felt it wasn't right. He was supposed to protect her, but the room was incredibly boring. Raffi took off, deciding to find someone else to play with. He gently pushed open the door, peeking his head out to look, but the hallway was empty. Still, the little boy was excited. Yay, time to play hide and seek. I'm going to find all of you. Raffi trotted off, pushing open one door after another. He looked around, but didn't find anyone. When he pushed open the last door, his eyes lit up. The room was decorated with all sorts of stars. There was even a large starry sky on the ceiling. Looking at his favorite stars, Raffi gasped in delight. A moment later, Willow stirred awake in bed. Suddenly, she bolted upright. She realized she had fallen asleep. She quickly got out of bed and looked around for Raffi, but the room was empty and the door was open. Willow rushed out of the room, calling out for Raffi, but there was no response. The Duke's mansion was so large, she worried that Raffi might get lost. Just then, Tia, the maid, appeared and asked if she had seen Raffi. She hadn't. Willow's face paled with worry. Tia suggested checking the dining room and told Willow to wait where she was. Willow was filled with guilt. It was all her fault. She shouldn't have fallen asleep. Meanwhile, Chester was furious. He had just returned from the doctor, who had diagnosed him with no mental health issues. But when the doctor learned that Chester only felt flustered around Willow, he couldn't help but laugh. Chester felt like the doctor was mocking him. Suddenly, he stopped walking. He realized he had unconsciously walked to Willow's door. He quickly turned around and hurried away. He felt like he wasn't quite right, but after a few steps, he stopped again, hearing footsteps. Willow turned around, tears in her eyes. "Please help me. Raffi has disappeared. I've searched the entire mansion, but I can't find him." Willow was distraught. She ran into the butler, whose name was Lohan, and begged him for help. Upon learning that young Master Raffi was missing, Lohan said he would immediately send people to look for him and told Willow to wait there. He would inform her as soon as they found him. But Willow was frantic. She wanted to go with them to search. She prayed silently that Raffi would be safe. Meanwhile, Chester's expression changed. He frowned, his eyes sharp. The door to the room had been opened. This was the room he had decorated with stars for his nephew. He had specifically instructed that no one was allowed to enter. He wondered who had dared to disobey his orders. Chester prepared to go inside and see who was in there. He would teach them a lesson. He flung open the door, ready to yell, but he froze when he saw Raffi sitting on the floor, beaming up at him. Chester was stunned. "Raffi, why are you here?" he stammered. Raffi exclaimed excitedly, "Uncle, I think I found Star Room. Look, there are so many sparkly stars here." "That's right," Chester replied with a smile. He was now in a dilemma. This room was originally intended for his real nephew, but he couldn't bring himself to send Raffi away. This place was too perfect for him. Just then, Raffi raised his hand, inviting him to play. Chester had intended to refuse, but Raffi had already melted his heart. He had no choice but to agree to play for a while. Raffi went up and took his hand, leading him to lie down on the floor so they could see the stars clearly. Chester felt a little awkward, but he lay down anyway. He asked Raffi why he was alone and where Willow was. Raffi blinked his big eyes. Willow was sleeping. Even if Uncle wanted to play with her, he shouldn't wake her up. Chester quickly corrected him. He didn't want to play with her. Raffi wondered if his uncle disliked Willow. Chester explained that wasn't what he meant. He had a bit of a headache. Lately, he'd been having hallucinations. Even when he was lying in bed sleeping, he would see Willow. But the doctor said there was nothing wrong with his mind. All he could do was try to stay away from anything related to Willow. Seeing his uncle silent, Raffi decided to sing him Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Just as the child was singing enthusiastically, Chester suddenly froze. Then he abruptly jolted. He saw Willow, the former captain, in his mind's eye. That damned old fool. He cursed the doctor internally. How could this be normal? Meanwhile, Willow was still searching for the child with the servants. Lohan reassured her not to worry too much. As long as Raffi was in the mansion, they would find him. They came to a corridor they hadn't searched yet. Willow desperately called out for Raffi, but there was no response. She worried that he might be injured and unable to answer. Just as Willow was starting to cry, she suddenly heard, A familiar voice. The butler pointed in surprise behind her. Looking back, Willow saw Raffi waving from behind a door. Willow rushed forward and embraced him. How could you wander off like that? What if you got hurt? Willow asked, her eyes full of concern. Raffi giggled and held up the star he was holding, explaining that he wasn't alone. Hearing the commotion, Chester grumbled as he walked out of the room. But when he saw Willow, he froze, completely still. The usually arrogant and indifferent Duke was like this in front of the girl he liked. Suddenly seeing Willow, Chester blushed and his heart raced. He even started hallucinating again. He quickly looked away and asked the butler what had happened. Lohan explained that everyone had been looking for Raffi. Willow apologized for causing such a commotion. I thought I'd lost Raffi. Seeing her covered in sweat, Chester realized she had been truly worried about the child. Willow then stood up and thanked him for staying with Raffi. But the next second, she felt dizzy and fainted. Fortunately, Chester reacted quickly and caught her, asking with concern if she was all right. Willow came to and quickly apologized. Lohan thought it was probably due to stress, like last time. Lying in Chester's arms, Willow's heart pounded. She was annoyed with herself for always making a fool of herself in front of him. Can you move? Chester suddenly asked. Willow was startled. What? Of course. Seeing that she could barely stand, Chester quickly opened the door and asked Lohan to help her inside to rest. Raffi excitedly pulled Willow inside. As soon as she stepped into the room, Willow's eyes widened. Clearly, she was stunned by the room decorated with stars. The next day was sunny and bright. Raffi was playing in the garden. Willow was quietly enjoying afternoon tea, reflecting on another peaceful day. In other words, a thoroughly boring day. Willow hoped the magic potion would be ready soon, so she could go home. Raffi was so happy every day. It should be fine to leave him here, especially with Uncle Duke taking care of him. Recalling last night in the star-decorated room, Willow learned from Lohan that Chester had bought all the decorations, because his brother had said before he died that his nephew loved stars, so he specially prepared this room. Thinking back to when they were fighting over the crystal ball at the market, Willow couldn't help but laugh. Knowing that Chester had a nephew, she finally felt relieved. Next, all she had to do was collect a reward and leave this place. But could everything truly end just by leaving? The lovable Raffi and the people of Fothergill Manor and Duke Chester. She would never see him again. Although they wouldn't stop her from seeing Raffi, she was, after all, a stranger. She shouldn't interfere in their affairs anymore. It wouldn't be good if the plot deviated because of her. Thinking about these things, Willow felt heavy-hearted and inexplicably gloomy. She thought that eating something sweet would improve her mood. Forgetting that Tia had no more cake, she got up to check the kitchen herself. She also wanted to grab the magic bag to play with Raffi. There wasn't much time left to stay here. Willow wanted to see more of her little one's happy face. On her way back, she suddenly stopped. She heard someone seemingly gossiping. Listening carefully for a moment, she discovered they were talking about Duke Chester murdering his own brother, and that it was to seize the dukedom. The investigation was all for show. Hearing this, Willow's face darkened. Angrily clenching her fists, she demanded, "Who said that?" The servants panicked, stammering and not daring to answer. But Willow continued to demand forcefully, "Answer me. Who said these things?" To be trusted by the person you like while dispelling rumors must feel wonderful. In the Duke's office, Chester was troubled by his work. He stood up, wanted to take a break. He pushed open the window and spotted Willow in the garden below. Chester's heart seemed to flutter away, but he froze, rooted to the spot. He was startled when the butler brought in tea. To hide his embarrassment, he quickly turned away, saying he was going for a walk. Taking a few breaths of fresh air in the grove, he immediately felt much clearer. Chester hesitated about returning, worried he might run into Willow. But his body, quite honestly, unconsciously led him near the garden. He kept taking deep breaths to relax, thinking this illness was truly annoying. Suddenly, he heard gossiping voices. The content was the same as before, saying he orchestrated his brother's accident for the dukedom, and the investigation was a sham. Chester frowned, his face darkening. However, he didn't plan to respond. It wasn't the first time he'd heard these rumors. Just as he turned to leave, he suddenly heard Willow's voice. Chester froze, hiding behind a tree and peeking out. He saw Willow demanding forcefully, "Who said these things? Do you have any proof?" The servants were speechless. Willow, her face flushed with anger, declared, "Listen up, everyone. This is all nonsense. Don't spread these rumors around anymore. His Grace would never do such a thing. Do you all understand?" Hearing these words, Chester's heart pounded. Perhaps he felt the joy of being trusted, especially by the person he liked. Just as Willow finished her impassioned defense, Chester emerged from behind the tree. The servants paled and scurried away. Willow felt inexplicably guilty, as if she'd been caught gossiping. The two stared at each other for a moment, the atmosphere extremely awkward. Willow turned and fled, saying she was going to find Raffi in the garden. Chester followed her, saying he was going for a walk in that direction anyway. Willow was a little puzzled. She wondered if he was still bothered by what she'd said earlier. She stopped suddenly and turned to apologize. Chester, completely confused, asked why she was apologizing. "Because of the rumors I overheard. You must be upset," Willow explained awkwardly. Chester was silent for a moment. He said he didn't care about the gossip. Willow didn't understand why he didn't care. "If I were you, I wouldn't be able to sleep," she said. Chester smiled slightly and asked why she was so sure he wasn't a murderer. Willow stammered, thinking she couldn't tell him she'd read it in a book. "Because you're absolutely not that kind of person." She took a deep breath and continued, "If you really killed your brother, how could you have put so much effort into decorating your nephew's room?" Looking at this strange woman, Chester was stunned. He thought, does she know me that well? Why is she trying so hard? She looked at me directly with those green eyes without hesitation and told me she believed me. At that moment, Willow's eyes sparkled in Chester's view. His heart pounded and his face flushed for some reason. Willow, thinking he had a fever, reached out to touch his forehead, startling him and causing him to flee. The maid pushed open Willow's door and was shocked by the scene before her. Raffi was kneeling on the bed, crying, "Willow can't die." Tia recovered and, smiling, reassured Raffi that Willow would be fine after some rest. It turned out Willow just had a cold. Worried she might be contagious, she asked Tia to take Raffi out. Raffi, however, threw a tantrum and refused to leave Willow's side. Having no other choice, Tia scooped him up, and dashed out of the room. Willow finally breathed a sigh of relief. After a moment of stunned silence, she tossed and turned in bed, berating herself for being so frail. She had been the Duke's assistant for 3 weeks and would soon have to part with Raffi. She didn't want to continue like this. She had to get better quickly. Meanwhile, in the study, Chester was buried in his work. Suddenly, he slammed his book shut. He had been staying up late, reading novels, researching, and suddenly realized his symptoms that were exactly the same as those described in the book. He blushed, and his heart raced whenever he saw her. He thought about her all the time. Chester finally realized he might be in love with Willow and not suffering from some mental illness. But he still couldn't believe it. Although Willow wasn't as materialistic and extravagant as the rumor suggested, and wasn't a con artist who used children, Chester still felt it was impossible for him to have fallen in love with her at first sight. Thinking about this, Willow's smiling face appeared in his mind. The blushing and racing heart intensified. Just then, the butler suddenly appeared, startling Chester. Lohan gestured to the documents. "Haven't you signed these yet? You told me to wait, but you seem preoccupied with reading." Chester, slightly embarrassed, quickly picked up a pen. But the next second he stopped. Looking up at Lohan, he suddenly asked, "Why do you love your wife? There must be a reason, right? A reason strong enough to make you want to marry her." Lohan paused for a moment, suddenly realizing Chester was asking about love. No wonder he's been acting so strangely around Miss Willow lately. It seems my guess was correct. Lohan, thinking this was Chester's first love, decided to offer some guidance. "There's no specific reason. It's just that one day, you suddenly understand what love is." Seeing Chester's confused expression, Lohan continued, "No matter what the initial feelings in relationship are, they will gradually change over time." Hearing this, Chester seemed to understand his true feelings for Willow. Just then, a knock came at the door. "Your Grace, it's Tia. May I come in?" After receiving permission, Tia gently pushed open the door. She explained that Raffi insisted on seeing him. Chester stood up, wondering what had happened. Raffi suddenly hugged his leg. "Uncle, what should I do? Willow is dying." Tia hurriedly explained, "That's not it. Miss Willow just has a cold. She's resting in her room now." Hearing this, Lohan suddenly had a bright idea. He felt this was a good opportunity to show his initiative. He immediately called out, "Duke Chester, now's the time to give her flowers." But Chester had a clueless expression. Who knew what kind of dense move he would make? The girl he liked was sick. That Sundara Duke remained at Sundara. Chester hid in the corner, restless and fidgeting. At this moment, he was struggling with whether or not to visit the sick Willow. Suddenly, a bouquet of flowers startled him. Lohan appeared, patiently explaining, "I told you to pick some flowers. Why did you come back empty-handed?" He then helped Chester tidy up his appearance. "I heard these flowers are good for colds. They don't need to be dried to be used, so I washed them and brought them here." Chester acted aloof. "I don't think it's necessary to go to this extent, Lohan." "Well, for a second there, you look like you needed help." Chester was speechless, turning his face red. Then Lohan thought of something else and whispered in his ear, "I heard that young ladies really like Sundram men these days." Chester looked disbelieving. Lohan, tired of arguing, simply pushed him forward. Chester, holding the flowers, nervously gulped. At this time, Willow was tossing and turning in bed. Although her fever had subsided, her headache was severe and she couldn't sleep at all. Suddenly, Chester knocked on the door, startling her. Willow slowly sat up. She just wanted to be left alone, but she also didn't want him to see her in such a weak state. After entering, Chester stared at her without saying a word. Willow was completely confused, unsure what he was up to. Seeing Chester frozen in place, Lohan, outside the door, was anxious. "Your Grace, why did you bring flowers?" Willow looked puzzled. Chester had a flash of inspiration. He said in a very Sunder manner, "I just picked them up randomly on the way here." Willow's face instantly fell. Lohan was equally speechless. The atmosphere became incredibly awkward. Chester realized he had messed up. Just then, Tia brought in hot water, subtly easing the awkward atmosphere. Chester smoothly took the cup and handed it to Willow. "I heard these petals can be used directly," he said, plucking petals and placing them into the cup. At this moment, his handsome appearance charmed Willow once again, but she quickly snapped back to reality. She wondered, isn't Tia supposed to do this? Why is he doing it himself? What's his ulterior motive? Chester reminded her to take it regularly. Hearing this, Willow suddenly understood, saying she would try her best not to infect Raffi. Chester was confused, not understanding what she meant. Willow spoke sarcastically, "Aren't you doing all this so I don't infect Raffi?" Chester was dumbfounded, at a loss for words. Lohan hadn't expected this either. He quickly ran into the room, making an excuse to take Chester away. Back in his office, Chester slammed the table and questioned Lohan, why would Willow think that? Lohan scratched his head awkwardly. "Well, that usually works. But you did treat Miss Willow like a liar before. Of course, she won't accept your kindness now." Chester thought it over and realized Lohan had a point. It seemed he could only wait until the antidote was ready. Then he could slowly clear up the misunderstanding. Night fell. In a deserted corner, avoiding the guards, Raffi's eyes flickered. He scratched his cheek. Suddenly, he transformed into a villainous appearance. If he wanted to get closer to Willow and Raffi, he would have to try a different approach. A man, possessing unparalleled beauty, willingly transforms himself into a small cat, all for the sake of getting close to the heroine. Inside the Duke's mansion, Willow is chatting with Raffi. Tia is playing marbles nearby, even giving each one a name. Watching the adorable Tia, Willow can't help but praise her unique ideas. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind blows through, causing Willow to sneeze abruptly. Raffi, his eyes full of concern, asks, "Willow, hasn't your cold gotten better yet?" Willow explains that it's probably due to the draft and gets up to close the window. Just then, a white cat suddenly leaps in, startling Willow. Raffi and Tia quickly ask if she's all right. Willow is somewhat stunned, staring blankly at the white cat before her. Upon discovering the kitten, Tia's heart overflows with affection and asks Willow if she can pet it. Raffi, equally delighted, reaches out to pet the cat. But in the next second, the white cat suddenly swipes at him. Raffi, still persistent, tries to approach it again quietly, only to provoke the white cat into frantic scratching and hissing. Willow takes the opportunity to teach Tia, "See, you have to get the cat's permission before petting it." A moment later, Willow continues chatting with Raffi, no longer paying attention to the kitten. Tia sits on the floor, staring into the cat's eyes. Suddenly, the white cat leaps, but it bypasses Tia and jumps directly onto Willow. It keeps meowing. "He's staying here, he's not leaving." "Looks like he really likes Willow," Raffi says excitedly. Tia, equally thrilled, urges Willow to pet it. Willow hesitates for a moment, then finally reaches out and gently strokes the cat. The kitten remains perfectly still. Seeing this, Raffi and Tia are filled with envy. But no one notices the cat's sly look. Meanwhile, in his office, Chester is restless. Raffi has arrived, but the Duke went to see Willow first. He worries if Raffi is there to speak ill of him. But in his heart, he knows Raffi isn't the type to intentionally badmouth someone. It's just that the possibility of him accidentally letting something slip is too high. With this in mind, Chester decides to personally bring Raffi over. But just as he steps out the door, he runs into his butler, Lohan. Lohan says he has something to report. Chester, however, is unconcerned, saying he has urgent matters to attend to and will hear the report later. But when Lohan mentions that the antidote sample has arrived, Chester immediately stops in his tracks. He is the arrogant and noble Duke, yet he considers a cat his rival in love. Lohan holds the antidote sample and asks Chester if he should inform Raffi and Willow. Chester becomes pensive. Even if the misunderstanding is cleared up with the antidote, won't the end result be Willow leaving? Thinking this, Chester decides not to inform them yet. He'll wait until the signed orders arrive. After all, they agreed to stay for a month. Lohan then realizes that the Duke doesn't want Willow to leave early. He then asks if he should return the sample. Chester decides that since they have the antidote, he can confirm it himself. He instructs Lohan to prepare drinks while he goes to fetch Raffi. At this moment, bursts of laughter can be heard coming from Willow's room. Raffi and Tia are clearly excited, urging Willow to touch the cat's paw. Willow cautiously reaches out and successfully presses down on the soft paw. The next second, she squeals with delight. Seeing Willow succeed, Raffi is envious. Does he want to recognize Willow as his owner? Tia asks with a smile. Willow strokes the cat's fur, convinced he must already have an owner. Just then, a knock on the door interrupts them. "Excuse me, miss," Chester says as he gently pushes the door open. Seeing him, Raffi immediately runs over and hugs his leg. Chester intends to take Raffi outside, but when he sees the white cat, his eyes widened. The white cat, feeling scrutinized, grew apprehensive, thinking it had been discovered. Chester's face darkened as he asked Willow where the cat had come from. The white cat, now thoroughly panicked, tried its best to appear innocent and harmless. Seeing the cat's fear, Willow held it tightly. This sight only fueled Chester's anger. Sensing the tense atmosphere, Willow quickly explained that the cat hadn't come with her, but had jumped in through the window. Chester glanced at the window, then walked over and examined the area. He noticed the distance between the window and the nearest tree was quite far. It would be impossible for a cat to jump that distance. Furthermore, no one in the mansion owned a cat. Willow then suggested she take care of the cat until its owner was found. A proposal met with Chester's strong objection. Everyone was confused, unsure of the reason. Chester stammered, claiming Lohan was allergic to cats. Willow was surprised. "Then it seems I'll have to take it back to my house." The thought of Willow and the kitten alone together back at her house stunned Chester. Strange images began to fill his mind. He immediately declared that absolutely wouldn't do. He couldn't let a cat get the upper hand. Willow was perplexed. "Then what should we do?" Chester said he would entrust the cat to Lohan to find its owner. Willow was even more confused. "But isn't Lohan allergic to cats?" Chester flustered. "He'll be fine as long as he doesn't touch it." Raffi, seemingly aware of Chester's thoughts, struggled to suppress his laughter. To hide his embarrassment, Chester quickly scooped up Raffi and ran out of the room. Raffi, unable to contain himself any longer, burst into laughter, shaking with amusement. He had sensed his brother's jealousy. After calming down, he turned to Willow and asked Willow, "What do you think of my brother?" Willow paused for a moment, then smiled brightly. "He's just a rich man." Hearing this, Raffi blushed with laughter. Meanwhile, outside the door, Chester wished he could disappear into a hole. Desperate to find his missing nephew, he offered a staggering reward of $100 million. But people kept trying to pass off fake children as his nephew. The only way to confirm their identity was with the antidote. The day he received the antidote sample, Chester immediately took Raffi to the observatory to verify his identity. But little Raffi was confused, asking why they were going. Chester stammered, saying he had new stars to show him. Raffi's face lit up with joy. At that moment, Chester realized how much the little boy loved the stars. The next second, Raffi hugged him tightly, saying he loved his uncle as much as he loved the stars. Looking at Raffi's bright smile, Chester was stunned. His brother's words echoed in his mind. Remember, children aren't just fragile. They're powerful. Even just looking at them, you can't help but smile. Now, Chester finally understood that feeling. Just then, Raffi suddenly sniffed him vigorously, leaving Chester bewildered. He asked Raffi what he was doing. Raffi blinked his large eyes. "I'm smelling you. Your smell is different from Willow's, and it feels so familiar. Raffi searched his memory. He tried to grasp that familiar scent, but the memory remained hazy. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Raffi's head. His pained expression startled Chester. He felt helpless, hugging Raffi tightly and asking where it hurt. Just then, Lohan appeared with drinks. Chester, his face etched with worry, immediately sent him to fetch a doctor. A short while later, the doctor, after examining Raffi, couldn't find anything wrong, but Raffi was still in pain. As they puzzled over this, Lohan suddenly spoke. Could his memory be returning? The doctor's eyes widened. What? Did this child lose his memory before? Chester was confused. Could that be related to his headache? If a normal person suddenly had a headache, it would indeed be cause for concern. But for someone with amnesia, intense pain often accompanies the recovery of memories. Right now, there's nothing we can do but watch over him. The doctor finished speaking, took out a bottle, and said this could alleviate the severe pain. Seeing Raffi in so much pain, yet unable to do anything but watch, Chester felt a pang of guilt. He wanted to give Raffi the medicine quickly, but smelling the strange odor, Raffi was very resistant. He kept his mouth tightly shut, refusing to open it. Chester said that if he took the medicine and got better, he would take him to see real stars. Raffi's eyes lit up. Really? Will Willow come with us too? Chester readily agreed and held the child in his arms. Raffi obediently took the medicine, but it was terribly bitter. Seeing this, Lohan handed over the drink in his hand. After a glass of juice, Raffi started to feel sleepy. Watching the sleeping child, Lohan's lips curled into a slight smile. Chester wanted Raffi to rest well and was about to leave the room. At that moment, Lohan said with a smile, "Your Grace, congratulations, you finally found him." Chester was stunned for a moment, then realized the significance of the added antidote. After Raffi drank it, his hair and soul remained dark. This meant Raffi really was his brother's child, the child he picked up from the trash heap, the one he had intended to exchange for an exorbitant reward. But after spending so much time together, he now felt closer to him than his own son. When Willow learned that Raffi was unwell, her face instantly paled. After handing the cat to Tia, she rushed off to find Chester. The white cat, sensing something was amiss, quickly followed. He didn't want to miss any important information. Willow nervously pushed open the door and saw Raffi sound asleep, with Chester watching over him. He explained to Willow that Raffi's severe headache was caused by regaining his memories. Learning that it wasn't an illness, Willow finally breathed a sigh of relief. But the scene before her was quite unexpected. Chester was looking at Raffi with concern and holding his small hand tightly. Willow felt uneasy. She felt he was different than usual, his expression heavy, as if something had happened. "Your Grace, are you all right?" Willow couldn't help but ask. Chester looked up, his gaze meeting hers. He suddenly said, "I'm sorry." Willow was stunned, completely taken aback. "I'm sorry for this whole time. I'm sorry for doubting you based on hearsay." Chester lowered his head, guilt-ridden. Willow looked at him in disbelief. She asked if he was feeling unwell, wondering why he would say such things. She even considered calling for a doctor. Chester's expression remained sincere. He said he meant it. Willow was utterly bewildered, at a loss for words. Just as she felt awkward, Raffi stirred awake. Willow quickly leaned down to check on him. He smiled brightly and said he felt better now. At that moment, both Willow and Chester breathed a sigh of relief. "Willow, come lie down and sleep with me." Raffi patted the pillow beside him. Willow glanced around, thinking that this was the room Chester had prepared for his nephew. He hadn't received Chester's approval yet, so he would surely be reluctant. She then offered to take Raffi back to her own room to sleep. But surprisingly, Chester told Raffi to stay and rest as long as he wanted. Willow felt uneasy, unsure what was going on with him today. As Chester was about to leave, Raffi suddenly sat up and patted the pillow on the other side. "Uncle, lie down and sleep too." Chester was taken aback. What? But under Raffi's insistent urging, how could he, a doting uncle, resist? A moment later, Raffi lay sleeping soundly in the middle. The scene looked just like a family of three. Willow felt a little embarrassed. "You must be very busy. I'm sorry to have kept you here so long." Chester wasn't used to lying down with other people, but he said it was all right. It was his choice, after all. Willow lay on her side, gazing intently at Chester, grateful for his patient care of Raffi. At that moment, Chester's heart began to race uncontrollably. He turned over, trying to compose himself, thinking a change of subject would help. But when he turned back, Willow was already fast asleep. Seeing her sleeping so peacefully, A smile slowly spread across Chester's face. He couldn't help but reach out and touch Willow's hair, but the next second, he quickly withdrew his hand, struggling to maintain his composure. His face, however, was flushed crimson. Unbeknownst to him, the white cat by the window had witnessed the whole scene. It seemed puzzled by what it had seen. He shared a bed with the girl he loved, but he was too nervous to sleep a wink. Sadly, when he woke up the next day, the girl didn't react at all. It was as if nothing had happened. From then on, Chester daydreamed constantly and often stole glances at Willow in the office. Just as he was lost in thought, Lohan, the butler, entered, seeing the Duke's haggard appearance. He quickly asked what was wrong. Chester sighed dejectedly, saying he didn't know how to begin. Lohan was confused, unable to understand what he meant until he saw Willow downstairs. Then he understood. But didn't you apologize? And Miss Willow's reaction seemed quite positive. Lohan asked with a smile. Chester's face remained clouded with worry. He felt that Willow wasn't interested in him. Her eyes were only for Raffi. Between the two of them, there seemed to be no place for him. Lohan asked if he was thinking of giving up. At these words, Chester's mind raced. Who said I'm giving up? What do you take me for? Lohan chuckled helplessly and announced that a guest had arrived. Chester was puzzled. He hadn't made any appointments today. The visitor was the young Earl Dureich, who said he had come to pay his respects. Lohan explained awkwardly. Chester's expression suddenly changed. A moment later, the man named Dureich arrived at the office. He chattered excitedly, but Chester remained silent. After Lohan served tea, the man asked him to leave, saying he wanted to catch up with his dear friend. However, this was entirely his wishful thinking. Chester had no desire to engage with him. Before he could finish speaking, Chester stood up and started to leave. This left the man feeling quite awkward. He continued to follow Chester. As they passed the window, he suddenly stopped, exclaiming Willow's name in surprise. Hearing this, Chester immediately asked if he knew her. The man said he had only seen her. After all, she was known for being a gold digger. That woman is always here, he remarked, puzzled. Chester grew impatient. What's it to you? But the man, oblivious, continued. And who's that child? Don't tell me she's using the child to try and extort money from you. Hearing this, Chester's face darkened instantly, but the man seemed unaware of the gravity of his words. I heard she's involved with loan sharks and is on the verge of bankruptcy. A beautiful woman like her, besides selling herself to pay off her debts, can only become a nobleman's mistress. With your wealth, she might just cling to you like a succubus. Chester froze. His teeth gritted in anger. He couldn't take it anymore. In the next second, he grabbed the man by the collar. He warned him to watch his mouth and firmly declared that Willow was not that kind of woman. The terrifying aura immediately paralyzed the man, leaving him slumped on the floor. Chester stormed off, radiating murderous intent. The man's bravado vanished under Chester's chilling glare, his killing intent piercing the man's cowardly heart. He made the man disappear before he could even strike him. He scrambled out the door, still muttering about the unfairness of it all, blaming the cabinets. After calming down, Chester ordered Lohan to immediately cancel all transactions with the Dureich family. His gaze drifted involuntarily towards Willow. Recalling the man's words, he then instructed Lohan to investigate Willow's debt and find out who the creditor was. In Chester's heart, even if Willow didn't choose him, he would never allow her to sell herself to anyone. He had rescued the boy from the slums for a reward of $100 million. But after a month together, the little boy had become the most important person in his life. Bubbles filled the air in the bathroom as Willow bathed Raffi. The little one was ecstatic. He was no longer afraid of the water. Instead, he played with the bubbles endlessly. Willow joined in the fun, piling foam on Raffi's head. The little one squealed with delight at the sight of his towering head of bubbles. The two played together harmoniously. When it came time to dry his hair, Raffi darted around like a rabbit, much to Willow's exasperation. Tia, who had brought the milk, hesitated as she was leaving. Miss Willow, she began about tomorrow. Willow looked at her blankly, asking what was happening tomorrow. Tia didn't elaborate, hurrying out of the room. Willow stood there, puzzled, until Raffi started gulping down his milk. Then she suddenly remembered. Tomorrow was the day the antidote would be ready. A wave of nervousness washed over Willow. It meant she would soon have to part with Raffi. Before bed, Willow asked Raffi where he had learned that funny little cough he made while drinking his milk. Raffi, giggling, explained that he had seen Moss do it and copied him. Willow told Raffi not to do it in front of others, saying she would be jealous and didn't want anyone else to see her adorable adorable little one. In truth, she was worried that some nobleman might disapprove of her playful interactions with Raffi. Willow prepared to sleep, but Raffi hesitated. Willow, he mumbled, can we sleep with Uncle Chester like we did before? Willow froze, remembering the awkwardness of the last time and unwilling to repeat it. She tried to put him off, promising to sleep together next time. But Raffi wasn't easily fooled. When his next time, he persisted. Willow thought for a moment. In 2 nights, she said. Pulling Raffi into a tight hug, Willow felt a pang of guilt. She had lied. In 2 days, she would be leaving the Duke's mansion. The thought brought tears to her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. The next morning, Lohan had prepared the juice laced with the antidote. He asked Chester if he wanted to postpone it for a few days. Chester shook his head. We made a promise. We must keep it. But when he arrived at Willow's room, he hesitated. Finally, he knocked. Seeing them enter, Willow understood what it meant. Are there any side effects? She asked, her eyes fixed on the juice. Chester assured her there weren't, telling her not to worry. Just then, Raffi stirred awake. Seeing Lohan holding the juice, his eyes lit up. He reached for it. But Chester suddenly stopped him. Wait a minute. Willow wondered if something was wrong. Chester stammered, unsure how to explain. Willow quickly moved to his side, grabbing his arm and whispering, are there really side effects? No, not at all. Chester denied frantically. Then why did you stop him? Willow pressed. Chester was speechless. He simply didn't want Willow to leave, not even for a moment. But he couldn't bring himself to say the words. Seeing the woman he loved about to leave, he found himself unable to utter a single word to stop her. After much internal struggle, Chester finally managed to stammer, I don't want you to leave. But Willow's attention was elsewhere. Raffi had just finished drinking the antidote. Chester's face registered shock. He rushed over to check if Raffi felt unwell. After examining him thoroughly and finding nothing amiss, Chester reassured him, don't worry. It's perfectly safe. Willow looked puzzled. Is that it? I thought there would be something more. Chester nodded, confirming that it was over. The confirmation that Raffi was indeed his nephew, although he'd been sure before, filled him with warmth. His brother in heaven could finally rest in peace. Seeing this, Willow felt happy for him. However, she couldn't help but think how dense Chester was being. He should be hugging his nephew. She nudged Raffi. Go on, sweetie, give your uncle a hug. The next moment, Raffi launched himself at Chester, catching him off guard. But his heart quickly melted. He hugged Raffi tightly. The scene moved Willow deeply. Tears unconsciously slid down her cheeks. She didn't understand why she was suddenly crying. Noticing that Chester and Raffi had seen her tears, Willow quickly turned away. She had meant to leave with a smile. Now, her plan was ruined. Just then, Raffi came running over. Willow, why are you crying? Chester thoughtfully offered her a handkerchief. Willow turned and dabbed her eyes, not wanting to appear vulnerable in front of him. But the tears kept flowing. She knew she had to leave quickly. Stroking Raffi's small face, she told him, be good for your uncle. Eat your meals. Take your baths. If you're scared, go to your uncle. You must grow up big and strong. Raffi seemed to realize she was leaving. He grabbed her hand, his voice choked with tears. Willow, where are you going? I want to go too. You said you'd always be with me. Seeing Raffi's devastated face, Willow felt a sharp pang of guilt. But she had to be firm. Your Grace, please take Raffi away. Chester turned and signaled. Lohan immediately picked Raffi up. No, let go. I want to go too. Raffi cried hysterically, even tearing the sleeve of his shirt. Willow's body trembled. She didn't dare look back. She walked straight to the door. All she wanted now was to leave as quickly as possible. Your Grace, please have someone send my luggage and payment to my home. Thank you for your hospitality. She was about to take her leave when Chester suddenly called out, wait, Miss Willow, I've misunderstood you, and I've been very rude. I am truly sorry. Willow forced a bright smile. It's just a misunderstanding. It's all cleared up now. At that moment, Chester felt an inexplicable pang in his chest. Seeing Raffi's distress, Willow couldn't stay any longer. She hurried out of the room. Chester stood frozen, his heart racing. Suddenly, it hit him. He didn't want her to go like this. Lohan, take care of Raffi. He ran after her. Miss Willow, please wait. He caught her hand. Desperate to stop the woman he loved, the proud Duke blurted out a proposal. I have something to tell you, Chester stammered, leaving Willow bewildered. He didn't know how to say it, and he couldn't just tell her not to leave. Noticing the injury on Willow's hand, Chester decided to bandage it first. We'll talk, after I've seen to this. They went to his office. Willow's emotions began to calm. Chester told her to wait a moment while he fetched the first aid kit. Looking at the mark on her hand, Willow recalled the earlier scene. If Chester weren't so gentle, he probably wouldn't have broken down. Willow felt embarrassed just thinking about it. She worried he might cancel their agreement later, but there probably wouldn't be a later. After all, today was the last day. At that moment, Willow thought of Raffi, Tia, Lohan, and many others in the Duke's mansion. She might never see them again. Or this room. She had once begged Chester in this very room, and today was the last time. Memories welled up, and Willow's tears started falling uncontrollably again. Just then, Chester entered with a first aid kit. Willow felt incredibly awkward. She bit her lip to control her emotions. But no matter what, she could finally go home with her payment and pay off her debts. Noticing her expression, Chester offered to come back later, but Willow said it was fine and asked him to just leave the kit. However, her clothes were a bit of a problem. After a moment of thought, Willow ripped her sleeve. Then she proceeded to tend to her wound. Meanwhile, Chester was already blushing, unable to look directly at her. He tried to snap himself out of it. Now wasn't the time to be daydreaming. Willow quickly finished bandaging her wound and asked him what he wanted to say. Chester was at a loss for words. He had thought about it for a long time, but still hadn't found a reason to ask her to stay. After a long silence, his expression suddenly turned serious. He clenched his fists involuntarily. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Miss Willow, let's get married." In that moment, time seemed to stand still. Willow was stunned. "What did you say you want to do?" "I said, let's get married," Chester repeated. Willow's face was filled with shock. She asked him if he had been drinking something strange. Why would he suddenly say something like that? Am I that repulsive? Chester asked dejectedly. Willow was blunt, of course. "Why would I marry you? I don't love you." Her words pierced Chester like a sword. "Please, I'm doing this for Raffi and me. Without you, I'm worried about Raffi's future life." Chester coughed, trying to hide his inner pain. Hearing this, Willow thought of Raffi, who had just broken down crying. "But why is the Duke also part of the equation?" she asked, puzzled. Chester was speechless. He thought about just confessing, "Because I like you." But before he could finish, he was interrupted by a sudden sneeze. Willow wiped her brow and asked if he had said anything. "Nothing," Chester said, his mustered courage dissipating. "It's just that it's hard for me to replace Raffi's parents on my own. So you want a marriage of convenience for Raffi's sake, right? I understand, but I refuse. I have my own life." With that, Willow turned to leave. Chester was frantic, desperately trying to stop her. Suddenly, he blurted out, "If you agree to a 1-year contract marriage, I'll give you 10 times the payment." Time seemed to freeze again, but in the next moment, Willow turned back with a bright smile. "Your Grace, may I call you husband?" she asked for 10 times the payment. The girl agreed to a contract marriage with the Duke, but he had already thought of names for their children. On a bright and sunny morning, Willow opened the curtains and looked lovingly at Chester. "Sleepyhead, time to wake up? Didn't we agree to have breakfast together?" The scene changed. Willow had another child. "Honey, look, our baby is smiling. I'll only love you in this lifetime," she said, snuggling sweetly in Chester's arms. Suddenly, Chester jolted awake. It had all been a fantasy. "I see you're daydreaming. Haven't you finished the contract yet?" Willow asked, puzzled. Chester's heart pounded. He tried to clear his head. Seeing his strange expression, Willow thought he was disappointed, thinking she was too materialistic. But with $1 billion, she wouldn't have to worry about these things. It would be enough to pay off her debts and enjoy life to the fullest. Even though they'd divorce after a year, Willow didn't care. She felt her reputation was already tarnished, so it was Chester who was at a disadvantage. Not only was he spending a fortune, but he'd also be labeled as Willow's ex. He really will do anything for Raffi, Willow thought, her haggang-do towards Chester increasing. Little did she know his true intentions. A moment later, Chester handed over the contract. "Take a look. If there's anything you want to change, just let me know." Willow picked it up and carefully reviewed it. Both parties agreed to maintain the marriage for 1 year. 2. Both parties must fulfill their respective duties. 3. If one party requires the other's attendance at an event, they must inform the other party at least 2 days in advance. 4. Upon termination of the contract, Chester will pay Willow $1 billion. Seeing this, Willow couldn't help but remind him, "Your Grace, $1 billion is not a small amount. Don't go back on your word later." Chester responded nonchalantly, "Is that a lot of money? It's just a blink of an eye's worth." Willow was immediately taken aback. She shouldn't have worried about a rich person's money. She continued reading. 5. The contents of this contract must not be disclosed to any third party. 6. By mutual agreement, this contract can be extended indefinitely. After reading it, Willow suggested deleting the last clause. She didn't think there would be an indefinite extension. But Chester immediately put on a pitiful expression. He stubbornly refused to delete it. Willow reluctantly agreed, thinking to herself, "Didn't he say I could suggest changes. What happens if someone leaks the contents of the contract? Is it automatically terminated, or are there other penalties? Willow asked, slightly puzzled. Chester didn't want the contract terminated. After a moment of thought, he decided to add another clause. If either party leaks the information, they must agree to one condition from the other party. Having written this, Chester told her to think carefully before signing, because this is a magical contract. If you violate it, you'll either die or be injured. Willow was stunned for 2 seconds, but she still readily signed. After all, there was no loss for her. Soon, the two reached an agreement. Willow said she needed to go home and asked Chester when he planned to visit her family. Chester was completely confused and didn't understand what she meant. Willow smiled and explained, "We have to make this act convincing, right? Just in case. Remember to come to my house to greet my parents." Chester was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized what she meant. "Why, you mean like formally ask for your hand in marriage?" Omitted appears to be a promotional blurb unrelated to the scene. For the $1 billion payment, Chester and Willow entered into a contractual marriage. After Willow agreed to marry Chester, she asked him to go home with her. The oblivious Chester only then realized she meant he should formally ask her parents for her hand in marriage. Willow, seeing Chester's confusion, said, Chester, nervous and excited, could barely speak. Willow found his flustered state endearing. She realized he hadn't thought that far ahead. Thinking it over, she realized it was a fake marriage, so they didn't really need to go that far. However, Willow didn't want to upset her parents, who treasured her. They haven't even known Raffi for long. They've only lived together for a few days, and they were already in tears when we parted. If they knew I was getting married for money, they'd faint. Oh dear. One lying in bed, the other kneeling and sobbing. I don't even want to imagine it. Willow felt both happy and exasperated. "So, Your Grace, I don't want to upset my parents. I hope you can make it all seem real. I don't want them to see through it," Willow pleaded earnestly. "And meeting my parents is just a meal. You just need to pretend you love me in front of them." Chester listened quietly to Willow, his gaze intense. As their eyes met, beneath Chester's calm exterior, he thought, "It's real now, at least for me. After all, I'm the only one being sincere." He said, "Okay, I understand." Finally, Chester thoughtfully asked what her parents liked. It wouldn't be right to visit empty-handed, especially for a marriage proposal. Willow was naturally happy he was so considerate. She simply said he could prepare some thoughtful small gifts. However, Chester still felt that wasn't enough. He thought he'd ask Lohan later. After all, he was more experienced and would know what gifts were appropriate. "Okay, I understand. Then I'll go see them the day after tomorrow morning." Willow felt it was a bit rushed, but Chester thought it was best to get these things over with quickly. Willow had to agree. After everything was discussed and she was about to leave, Willow paused, hoping to see Raffi one more time. She also asked Chester if he could provide another carriage. Chester agreed to her request and arranged for a carriage to be ready for her downstairs. Willow was happy and about to turn and leave when Chester called out to her, wanting to say something more. Unsure of what to say, he expressed himself through actions. With a flourish, he removed his coat and draped it over Willow's shoulders. He told her to be careful of the cold outside. An ambiguous atmosphere spread between them. The usually serious Duke showed a tender expression. Willow's heart pounded. Looking at his expression, it seemed like he didn't want to part. The ambiguous atmosphere intensified. Suddenly, Lohan appeared in an opportune moment, making the atmosphere instantly awkward. "Miss, you haven't left yet." Faced with Lohan's question, Willow quickly said, "I was planning to see Raffi before leaving." Lohan didn't seem to notice the Duke's expression. However, he naturally understood the real reason. Still, he answered Willow's question. "Raffi is in his room now." Willow thanked Lohan. After thanking him, she was about to leave. She also thanked the Duke for his coat, adding, "I'll return it to you next time we meet." "All right, see you next time." Unaware of their plans, Lohan questioned them about their next meeting. The moment the door closed, his gossipy nature took over. "Have you and Miss Willow already arranged a meeting? Did you suddenly find the courage to ask her out when you saw her leaving?" Chester was speechless. But Lohan wasn't deterred. He even offered his assistance, saying he would do his utmost to help with anything. The next second, he heard Chester's surprising words, asking him to find a suitable wedding venue. Lohan looked incredulous. Shaking his head, he advised the Duke, no one sets their first date at a wedding ceremony. Chester, dizzy from being shaken, simply said it had nothing to do with the date. This made Lohan relieved, thinking it must be someone close to the Duke getting married. He's preparing it for them, right? Chester dropped the bombshell I'm the one getting married. Lohan finally understood. So you're preparing to marry Miss Willow. He chuckled. It seemed Lohan still hadn't fully processed the information, falling silent for a moment. Finally realizing what was happening, Lohan exclaimed, "That's not right. Why are you suddenly getting married? What have you done? No matter how much you like Miss Willow, you can't be so reckless." Chester was exasperated by his words. Grabbing his collar, he retorted, "Why would I do that? Are you looking for a fight?" Lohan wasn't angry. Instead, he looked at the Duke with admiration, thinking he had managed to accomplish such a feat in such a short time and even get her agreement. However, he was still worried. "Your Grace, that you didn't make some sort of deal with her, did you?" Chester, feeling exposed, turned his head away to hide his reaction. "Judging by your reaction, I guess I was right. You did make a deal. This is unbelievable. Even if it was to keep her here, that's too extreme. Marriage. It's fortunate Miss Willow agreed. Wouldn't it have been easier to hire Miss Willow as the young master's tutor?" Chester had considered that. "But if we weren't married and she started seeing other men, I wouldn't be able to interfere," he finished, coughing to hide his blush. Lohan was dumbfounded by the Duke's actions. Master is truly head over heels in love. Meanwhile, Willow arrived at Raffi's room, wanting to say goodbye to him personally. Unexpectedly, Tia said Raffi needed to sleep soundly until morning and that she would tell him when he woke up. Looking at the sleeping Raffi, Willow could only ask Tia to take good care of him. Raffi was truly attached to Willow, even calling her name in his sleep. In the middle of the night, he dreamt that Willow was leaving him, crying and begging her not to abandon him. Unable to hold on to Willow, he abruptly woke up from his dream, crying. He went to the window, wondering where Willow had gone and pleading with her not to leave him. He happened to see the villain, transformed into a small cat, passing by downstairs. He wondered where the little cat was going so late at night. The moon climbed high in the branches. It was late. Willow, carrying gifts for everyone, returned home. "Mom, Dad, I'm home," she called out. "How have you been?" Hearing her soft voice, her parents, who had been waiting for a long time, rushed out to greet her, concerned about why she arrived so late. "We were so worried about you. It's been so long since you've been home. I was preparing some things, and it took until now. I picked out little gifts for everyone. Nothing expensive." Touched to tears by the gifts from their daughter, her parents were overwhelmed. Even the butler was surprised. Willow had gotten him a gift too. She was truly different now. As it was late, Willow excused herself, saying she was tired and wanted to sleep, promising to chat tomorrow. Then, her parents suddenly asked, "What about Raffi? Did you say goodbye to him properly? Such a small child, left there alone. Will he be all right without you?" "It's all right, I think. The Duke is a good uncle," Willow reassured them. Her parents felt relieved. After all, Raffi was back with his family now, so their worries were unnecessary. "It's just that we probably won't see him very often anymore," they said. "It shouldn't be that difficult, should it?" Her parents wondered why Willow said that, but didn't press further. Feeling awkward, Willow mumbled that she couldn't take it anymore and ran upstairs. Reaching her room, she slammed the door shut, tossed her clothes aside, and flopped on her long-missed bed. "So comfortable," she sighed. Turning her head, she saw Chester's coat. She thought to herself, "This is really complicated." Although she knew her parents would still see Raffi, the fact that she was going to marry the Duke. But how am I supposed to tell them? This is a recipe for disaster. Exhausted from the day, Willow just wanted to lie in bed and sleep, ignoring everything. "I'll deal with it later," she decided. Meanwhile, the villain, transformed into a cat, looked around. Seeing no one, he touched his red necklace and with a flash, transformed back into a handsome young man. Ignoring the fact he'd almost suffocated, he needed to report the situation to his master. A blood red orb slowly floated up. It crackled with energy. "What's the situation now? That child is indeed the real one. But what do you plan to do?" A chilling laugh echoed. "What to do indeed? Bring him me alive. Or should I just kill him? A grand conspiracy is about to unfold. Just give the order. Any command and I'll—" He didn't finish his sentence. A meow interrupted him. "What's that brat doing here?" He quickly grabbed the orb and transformed back into a cat just as Raffi saw him. Raffi ran over and found the cat. "He didn't see me." "That's good," the cat sighed in relief. "But why isn't this kid asleep? Why is he here?" The cat didn't want to stay with Raffi. Even if he showed his displeasure, the child wouldn't understand. He decided to go somewhere else. Seeing the cat leaving, Raffi chased after him. "Where are you going?" "Stay with me." "Okay." The cat ignored him and sped up. In his pursuit, Raffi tripped and fell with a thud. So clumsy. Is he really the Duke's heir? Raffi started crying. The cat didn't care. He continued on, looking for a quiet place to finish his report. Raffi wailed, "Kitty, don't go." You're leaving me too. I don't want to be alone. Hearing this, the cat stopped. Perhaps feeling empathy, the cat returned to Raffi's side. Seeing the cat come back, Raffi hugged the cat. You came back. Thank you, kitty. The proud cat denied it. Don't get the wrong idea. Your crying was too loud. It would attract others. That's why I came back. It's not because I care about you. Definitely not. Anyway, this level of contact won't affect my mission. Elsewhere, the Duke's staff were searching for the missing Raffi. This is bad. Such a small child, disappearing in his sleep. It's normal for someone to come looking. If they see that person, Chester quickly found Raffi. Chester looked shocked. Raffi, what are you doing here? And this strange little cat. The cat, feeling scrutinized, had a bad feeling. This could get serious. Back at the Duke's mansion, Tia was apologizing. After Willow left, Raffi said he would sleep until morning, but he didn't. They almost couldn't find him. Thankfully, they finally found him and put him back to bed, coaxing him back to sleep. He caught a chill, so she warmed him up a bit. Tia then noticed the cat wasn't the same one from before. It turned out that after Willow left, Raffi wanted to stay with the cat. He said if the cat couldn't come in, he wouldn't either. I couldn't do anything about it. The villain, disguised as the cat, was incredulous. Chester was letting Raffi stay with him. When Chester saw him with the kid outside, his eyes were full of killing intent. Coaxing him back to sleep, Tia realized the young master missed Willow. She told him Willow would be back soon and to be good. But Raffi wasn't so easily fooled now. He specifically asked if Willow was really coming back. After receiving confirmation, he finally laid down contentedly. Rohan returned, bringing the item Chester had requested. Chester suspected something was wrong with the cat. Why would it randomly appear at the Duke's mansion? But since Raffi insisted on staying with it, he had to take these measures. This magical device could suppress magical effects, monitor killing intent, and track movement. As long as we don't let it leave ourselves, that strange cat will never get out of this building. Satisfied, he told Tia to get some warm milk. Just then, Rohan attached the device to the cat with a swift, deceptive move. He made up an excuse about preventing the cat from getting lost and needing to wear it until its owner was found. By the time the cat realized it was a device, it was too late. Rohan said it was safer for the cat to stay inside. But Chester wasn't letting his guard down. The cat trembled with rage, realizing it had been tricked. Tia returned with the warm milk. Chester and Rohan decided to leave, asking Tia to take good care of Raffi. The cat could only glare at them, while the device provided some reassurance. They couldn't relax just yet. Stay vigilant. Report anything unusual to me, Chester instructed Rohan. Having been the butler for so many years, Rohan understood the gravity of the situation. He would watch Raffi carefully. Chester also requested a swing be set up in the courtyard. Rohan was puzzled by this. Was the Duke's engagement not going well? But that didn't seem right. Chester hoped the swing would help alleviate Raffi's loneliness. Rohan hadn't expected such consideration from the seemingly aloof Duke. He readily agreed. The next day, outside the Duke's mansion, a luxurious carriage arrived. Who was visiting? A young girl, elegantly dressed, stepped out and greeted the Duke. It was Aine. Alderman had also arrived. It had been 5 years since their last visit. Chester felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering when Aine was just a baby. It's been 5 years since we last saw each other. Alderman felt a little awkward about the long absence. Don't be a stranger. You know how things are. Alderman smiled. You're the only one who understands. Knowing about Chester's nephew's disappearance, he inquired about the search. He was relieved to hear Chester had found him. He told Aine it was wonderful that her uncle had found his nephew. But her reaction was rather calm, unlike a child's excitement. Not like you were as a child. Did you inherit Via's personality? Alderman was speechless. Just how mischievous had he been as a child? He didn't say anything, but he hoped Chester would give Aine a tour. Since he didn't want to answer, Chester decided to let it go and asked Rohan to give Aine a tour. They arrived at the back garden. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed. Having never seen such a beautiful place, Aine gasped in awe, remarking on the Duke's lovely courtyard. Rohan, also pleased, pointed towards the glass conservatory and was about to lead her forward when a swing caught Aine's eye. Rohan thoughtfully asked if she wanted to try it. Aine hesitated, thinking swings were only for children and that, as an adult, she shouldn't play on one. Rohan figured her mother's illness had made her mature too quickly, but there was no need to force herself to act like a grown-up. He made an excuse, saying, even adults like me use the swing. After hearing Rohan's words, would Ain try it? The newly arrived Ain and Raffi. What story will unfold next? Persuaded by Rohan, Ain sat on the swing. As expected, no child could resist a swing. Once she was settled, Rohan began to push. The swing creaked rhythmically, her feet leaving the ground. Ain felt a joy she hadn't experienced before, happily playing. Then Raffi's loud voice rang out. This is my toy. How can others just touch it? Elsewhere, Willow and her family were enjoying a delicious breakfast, complete with desserts and coffee. As they prepared to have Melvin deliver the prepared money, Willow asked her parents if there were any other debts besides those listed in the ledger. Her father stood up and said since the money was ready, they should go repay the loan shark first. Willow wanted to go to the bank with her mother, but her mother said she had helped enough and wanted her to rest at home. Her father agreed, saying after being out for so long, she deserved a good rest. Willow couldn't refuse, and her parents agreed. As they left, Willow watched them go, the words she wanted to say still unspoken. She had planned to tell her parents about her upcoming marriage to Chester, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. She didn't know how to begin. Besides, it wasn't just the ledger that had kept her busy. Annoyed and regretful, Willow slammed her fist on the table, thinking she would definitely tell them when they returned. Her gaze fell upon a carrot on the table, reminding her of Raffi. He loved carrots. She wondered how Raffi was doing and if he was getting used to the Duke's mansion. Meanwhile, Raffi and Ain were fighting over the swing. Raffi was pulling on the ropes, and Rohan, fearing he would get hurt, quickly tried to stop him. Raffi refused. Why should I let go? Tia said Uncle made this for me. It's mine. He demanded. Why shouldn't she get off? I haven't even had a turn yet. Why should she get to sit there? Raffi pulled harder on the swing as they struggled. Tia, arriving on the scene, was horrified. She picked Raffi up and gently explained that he shouldn't treat guests that way. They could use the swing later. Raffi ignored her, struggling and shouting no. No, Ain sighed softly. It's all right, I'm done, she said, getting off the swing. Rohan, surprised by her understanding nature, started to ask if she wanted to continue later. Before he could finish, Ain interrupted him, surprisingly saying, let the little boy have it if he wants. The little boy she referred to as Raffi. Hearing this, Raffi's face flushed red. He protested, I'm not a little boy. I'm not. But his outburst had little effect. Ain remained calm, like an adult. Gesturing to Raffi's height, she stated matter-of-factly, you're so much shorter than me. What else would you be but a little boy? The atmosphere instantly became tense as they locked horns. Rohan and Tia sensed something was amiss. They decided to take Raffi back to his room, suggesting snacks or playtime. Tia specifically mentioned lighting up Raffi's favorite snowflake crystal ball. Raffi's rising temper was just beginning to calm down. Don't be a baby, Ain thought. Who plays with snowflake crystal balls if they aren't a child? This made Raffi feel even more wronged. What's wrong with the snowflake crystal ball? It's not childish. Raffi stomped angrily on the dirt, sending it flying. Ain stared, stunned, as the dirt landed all over her shoes. Rohan and Tia were horrified. What do we do? They wondered. Young Master Raffi. They called, but the furious Raffi ignored them. Ain trembled, looking at her soiled clothes and shoes. Tears welled in her eyes as she glared at Raffi. In the next moment, she scooped up some dirt and threw it at Raffi, demanding an apology. Rohan and Tia, frozen in place, thought, this is a disaster. These two are going to fight. A clash was imminent. Who would emerge victorious? Why should I apologize? You should apologize. They shouted at each other, immediately tumbling into a brawl. Rohan and Tia struggled to pull them apart. Once separated, they were brought before Chester. What happened? He asked. In just a short time, both children were disheveled and fuming. Chester looked at Rohan, who explained apologetically, it was my fault. I wasn't attentive enough. Chester then asked Ain what had happened. She had never acted like this before. Suddenly, Ain burst into tears. This dress, why mother picked it out for me. And she's sick. Chester overheard their conversation and turned to Raffi, who stood there sullenly. Chester's expression was cold. Why did you get Ain's clothes dirty? He asked. Raffi trembled, on the verge of tears, at his uncle's stern look. Then he suddenly burst out crying and yelled, don't look at me like that. I didn't do anything wrong. That swing is mine. You made it for me. Why is she on it? Chester was taken aback by Raffi's outburst. He continued, between sobs, and Willow's snowflake crystal ball is stupid. Chester realized that the snowflake crystal ball was a gift from Willow, making Raffi's anger understandable. It was his most prized possession. Chester chuckled to himself. Children are so innocent, he thought. Watching Raffi sob, he gently wiped away his tears and pulled him into a hug. He comforted Raffi, acknowledging that it was difficult for both of them after being apart for so long. Chester knew they were both at fault, but Raffi had fallen asleep, so the apology would have to wait, and was also listless. Since things had turned out this way, Chester hoped Raffi would apologize to Ain later. Ain and her family decided to leave. After such an incident, it was best to go home and try another visit later. Before leaving, Ain congratulated Chester on his upcoming marriage, acknowledging that he wasn't alone anymore. She also asked him to relay a message to his fiancée. Hearing the word fiancée, Chester blushed, his heart pounding. He clearly wasn't used to the term. He realized, I'm really getting married. Rohan tried to ask about the message, but Chester was too lost in thought about the upcoming wedding to hear him. On the appointed day, Chester, dressed in his finest clothes, arrived at Willow's home to meet her parents. Willow's mother opened the door and invited him in. The meeting was a bit awkward at first, but Willow's mother broke the ice. Seeing that Chester had brought attendants, he offered to have them wait outside. However, Willow's mother insisted that it was no trouble and welcomed them. Chester expressed his pleasure at meeting her. The Baroness then asked Willow to escort Chester to the main drawing room while she went to inform her husband. As they walked, Willow glanced at Chester. This isn't the time we agreed on, she thought. After a moment, she asked him why he was so early. Chester feigned ignorance. He didn't want her to know he had left early to calm his nerves. Then, I went shopping specifically to buy a gift. I thought about what to get. In the end, even after my walk, I still had a lot of time left. Chester had planned to wait in the carriage at the gate, but Rohan, the butler, found him. So, he had to come in early. But I can't tell him that. Otherwise, Willow will definitely think I have nothing to do. So, I made up an excuse, saying my schedule suddenly cleared up. I wonder if coming so early will trouble him. Willow quickly said that wasn't what she meant, just that the timing was a little awkward. Actually, I've only just told my parents about the wedding, and they refused without a second thought. It's really worrying. Chester finally understood why Willow had said that, and this matter probably wouldn't be easy to resolve, especially with Willow's father, who couldn't accept that she was getting married. Willow thought they might only manage a brief greeting today. Before she could finish, Chester suddenly cupped her face. It startled Willow. He was so close. Her heart pounded. She thought he was going to kiss her. His fingers lightly touched her lips, as if something was about to happen. With anticipation, Willow waited. Chester suddenly pulled his hand away. It turned out it was just a strand of hair on her lip. Willow blushed at her own fantasy. What was I thinking? I am crazy. Even if we're pretending to be a couple, he can't keep up the affectionate act all the time. He must look so handsome today that it's short-circuiting my brain. Chester wondered why Willow was looking at him like that. Did he overdress? Was something wrong? So blunt. Chester still didn't understand. He just said she looked good in anything. He didn't expect such a compliment. Chester blushed, covering his embarrassment with a cough. Willow saw he was shy but didn't tease him. There was a knock at the door. Willow's father entered, greeting Chester with a serious expression. They both sat down. Silence hung in the air, punctuated only by the ticking of clock. Seeing this, Willow felt it was a lost cause. It was the first time she'd seen her father so angry. Her father didn't look like he was going to yield. Willow felt even more uneasy. Still, she spoke up, but Chester didn't understand, coming across as somewhat pushy. This made Willow's father even more convinced that he had sweet-talked his daughter. He absolutely wouldn't agree to this marriage. He stared at Chester. Chester, though nervous, didn't want to look away. Avoiding eye contact would make him seem weak. Their gazes locked, sparks flying. Finally, Willow couldn't stand it anymore. She nudged Chester with her hand. If this continued, they'd start fighting. She hinted that Chester had something to say, whispering to him to lighten the mood. Otherwise, their marriage plans were doomed. Chester cleared his throat, announcing he had brought a gift for the Baron. He had someone place the gift on the table, saying it was a token of his affection for Willow. But in Chester's mind, this small gift, that was not small at all. When opened, it emitted a dazzling light, stunning Willow's parents. Before their eyes were lustrous diamonds of all kinds. There was a blue diamond called the Sun, a pink diamond called Joyful Celebration, and Chelsea's Blessing. It was truly blinding. And in Willow's memory, these were the most precious gems in the world. Yet, for Chester, they were a small gift. He even had an expression that sought praise. Does this guy think small gift refers to the physical size? Just how rich is he to consider these small? It was absurd. Willow's father wasn't swayed by this. He cared most about his daughter's happiness. He immediately told Chester to take the gifts back. He didn't need them. Although his family wasn't wealthy, they wouldn't accept the Duke's charity. It seemed Chester had misunderstood. Chester quickly tried to explain, but Willow's father wouldn't listen. He was even angry. He had no intention of selling his daughter. He asked Chester to leave immediately. Chester didn't know what to say. Willow had a look of utter dread on her face. He gulped. Usually accustomed to big occasions, Chester was at a loss this time. He fidgeted in his chair. Inexperienced in these matters, he couldn't understand why the Baron and Baroness were so displeased. He even regretted not having Rohan prepare the gifts. However, his next move further angered the Baron and Baroness. Unwilling to back down, he asked them to tell him anything they desired. Ignoring him, the Baron simply waved his hand, dismissing him and his servants carrying the gifts. Both Willow and Chester were bewildered. Refusing to listen, the Baron wanted Chester and his servants to leave immediately. His serious expression was devoid of any hint of a smile. Chester became tongue-tied, unable to speak properly. He clearly lacked any talent in this area. Willow was exasperated. I have to help him before he's completely thrown out, she thought. Willow tried her best to explain to her parents. The Duke didn't mean any disrespect. He's just trying his best to show his sincerity. She even took his hand, hoping to subtly hint at Chester to be more perceptive. She had gone this far, but the love-struck Duke, that had Willow on his mind, his heart pounding. He instinctively grasped Willow's hand. Willow didn't understand why he was holding her hand so tightly, her expression innocent. Only later did she realize they had begun acting. She squeezed his hand back in return. The oblivious Duke's heart beat even faster. The Baron's expression, however, darkened. He was practically fuming. Seeing how much her daughter liked Chester, Willow's mother was pleased. She asked Willow to excuse herself, wanting to speak with Chester privately. Willow was a little surprised and worried about leaving Chester alone in case he said the wrong thing. Chester knew this was necessary and reassured Willow not to worry, that he would handle it. With no better option, Willow got up and left. The Baron didn't want to talk, complaining to his wife about why she had made him stay. Chester sat rigidly, nervously, not daring to move. Despite his wife's attempts to persuade him, the Baron remained convinced that nothing would change. Finally, losing his patience, he addressed the Baron by his first name, in a voice too low for Chester to hear. The Baron was utterly henpecked. The moment his wife got angry, he visibly cowered and sat down. Willow's mother directly asked Chester his reasons for wanting to marry Willow, kindly telling him to relax and speak freely. Encouraged by the Baroness, Chester resolved to make the most of this second chance and show them his sincerity. Chester hesitated, but finally resolved to let them see his true feelings. Looking up, he declared his love for Willow to the Baron and Baroness. This declaration amused the Baroness, but the Baron remained skeptical. They had only known each other for a short time. When exactly had this all started? Chester pondered for a moment and decided to be honest. When had it all begun? Initially, due to rumors, Chester had disliked Willow. He had thought she was fake. They had even clashed the moment they met. I believed the rumors too readily, he explained, and assumed her kindness was an act. I wanted to find a way to expose her. But as I got to know her, I realized Willow was nothing like the rumors. She risked her own safety to save Raffi. That's not something you can fake. I slowly became drawn to her. She's truly a strong and kind person. Unlike me, she always stays true to her convictions, unwavering. And as we spent more time together, I realized my feelings for her had changed. I couldn't stop thinking about her. I wanted to see her. At first, I didn't understand these feelings. Later, I realized I had fallen in love with her. As he spoke, a vision of Willow's smile seemed to appear, and Chester blushed slightly. His words not only satisfied the Baroness, but also touched the Baron. However, the Baron quickly regained his composure. He acknowledged Chester's feelings, but marriage was a serious matter and shouldn't be rushed. Chester felt a bit greedy. Willow had the ability to capture everyone's love. He wanted to quickly become her husband and protect her. It turned out the Baron and Baroness felt the same way in the past, though the Baron was a bit reluctant to admit it. Back then, they also got married after only 2 months of knowing each other. The Baron didn't want outsiders to know. At the time, people also said they would regret it later. We didn't take it seriously. So, Your Grace, I have something to tell you. Chester nervous and curious, wondered what the Baron was going to say. Just as nervous as Chester was Willow, pacing back and forth outside the door. Restless, she thought, why is it taking so long? Will they find out? She ran through every possible outcome in her mind. Click! The door opened, and Chester emerged. Willow nervously rushed over, asking what her parents had said. Seeing her anxious expression, Chester decided to tease her. He leaned in close to her ear, but didn't reveal the answer she was waiting for. He mysteriously told her it was a secret. Willow was exasperated. What secret? What are you talking about? Chester ignored her and turned to walk towards the dining room, as they had already agreed to meet there. Where Willow couldn't see, Chester grinned. The Baron and Baroness had agreed to entrust Willow to his ducal house. Raffi was searching everywhere for the kitten, who was deliberately hiding. Raffi continued to search, calling out. Because of the suppression device, the kitten couldn't contact its master. The kitten regretted feeling sympathy for Raffi. Now trapped here, its master would be furious. It had to quickly find the deactivation device for the magic suppressor. That wretched Duke Chester, where could he have hidden it? The kitten checked every room. Either it wasn't there, or the room was locked. If I can't find it and deactivate this, I'm going to be stuck as a cat forever. That wouldn't do. The kitten finally arrived at Chester's office and pushed hard against the door. But before it could open it, Raffi found it. This wasn't good. The kitten tried to wriggle free, but Raffi held it tighter. He thought the kitten's meows meant it missed Willow, just like him. The kitten was exasperated. When did it ever imply that? Raffi looked at the kitten with a sentimental gaze, expressing how much he missed Willow too. But his uncle had said Willow would be back soon, so the kitten shouldn't keep looking for her. The kitten finally understood that Willow really wasn't there. No wonder Raffi kept clinging to it. The kitten desperately hoped Willow would return quickly. It couldn't take this anymore. Meanwhile, Willow was refusing her father's offer of a drink, not even a small one. Not only because they had just eaten breakfast, but more importantly, what if she accidentally said something wrong if she drank? Willow glared, pretending to Chester that she didn't drink. Her expression was exactly like the Baron's when he was afraid of his wife. The Baron, however, said he wanted to have a drink with his future son-in-law. The words son-in-law were like a trigger. Chester immediately changed his demeanor, expressing his willingness to have a drink with his father-in-law. The transformation was so swift that Willow was taken aback. She tried to urge the Duke to leave, saying he was busy and needed to return. Just then, a hand rested on her shoulder. Turning, she saw it was her mother. Her mother wanted to give them some time alone, knowing they had things to discuss. Before Willow could protest, the Baroness pulled her out the door, hoping they would have a pleasant time. The Baron was pleased to see his wife understood him. The door closed behind them. Willow was still worried. What if her father asked Chester strange questions? Her mother sensed her unease. She explained that if her father hadn't approved of Chester, he wouldn't even have looked at him. Willow thought that was true. Her father's attitude had shifted after their private conversation. Even the atmosphere during the meal had been much better. The Baron and Baroness had changed their minds so quickly. It seemed Chester was a very good actor. Willow felt less worried. A while later, when they returned to the dining room, the wine was gone and most of the food had been eaten. The Baroness hadn't expected the Baron to be so happy and drink so much. The Baron was lying on the sofa, snoring occasionally. Chester was slumped over the table. The Baroness and the butler hurried to help the Baron up, instructing someone to take Chester to the guest room to rest. It was the first time Willow had seen Chester drink so much. With mewing, Chester returned to his room before Willow even had a chance to smell anything. Sitting on the bed, Chester muttered something to himself. Willow directly asked Chester a question. He looked up and their eyes met. Willow's heart pounded. Seeing him half-dressed like this made her heart flutter even more. She hadn't expected Chester to look so attractive drunk. Oh no! Willow realized she couldn't keep looking at him like that. She needed to get him to sleep and leave. She helped the Duke take off his clothes and shoes. Chester obediently let Willow undress him. After she finished, she helped him lie down. Willow was curious about what they had talked about to make him drink so much. Chester, a lightweight, recalled the conversation with his father-in-law. The Baron reminisced about how Willow, as a child, learned chemistry and walked earlier than other children. And unlike the rumors outside, she was a kind child. When the sick Raffi came to their home, she took care of him with genuine care. Once she sets her mind to something, she will achieve it. Chester listened quietly to the stories about Willow. The Baron confessed his worries. He said that no matter how much he tried to dissuade her, Willow would find a way to marry Chester. He drained his glass, revealing his deepest concern. Willow's reputation wasn't the best, and their family had little to offer. He worried that after marrying the Duke, Willow would be plagued by public opinion. Her usually strong father seemed helpless at this moment. Chester reassured him, saying he wouldn't let anyone mistreat Willow as long as he was around. Now, thinking about it, Willow chuckled to herself. After settling the Duke down, she was about to leave when Chester called out to her. Willow didn't hear what Chester said, so she leaned closer, still unable to hear him. She put her ear right next to his mouth and asked him to repeat himself. Chester pulled Willow closer and told her not to call him Your Grace anymore. He told her to just call him Chester. Willow was surprised by his request. Feeling a little embarrassed, they simply gazed at each other. While joy filled the air here, someone elsewhere was completely unconcerned with their happiness, worried about losing contact. Haiza, disguised as a kitten, had infiltrated the Duke's mansion. He pocketed the device that caused everyone to tremble uncontrollably. The masked man, furious, ordered his men to find Haiza immediately and figure out what was happening. After telling Willow to call him Chester, Chester realized he also wanted to call her Willow. Willow was shocked. What was wrong with this man? He was so different when drunk. Chester gazed at Willow affectionately. It felt surreal. He reached out and gently caressed her face, confessing how much he wanted to say her name. He even touched Willow's lips, making her heart race. Her face flushed. She felt like her heart was about to explode. Chester, still smiling faintly, called her Willow again. Unable to bear it any longer, Willow excused herself to get him some water. Her heart still pounded. She hadn't realized he was such a flirt when drunk. The next moment, he grabbed her hand. Suddenly sitting up in bed, he held her hand tight. He thought this must be a dream. If it wasn't, why would Willow allow him to touch her like this and take such good care of him? This must be a dream brought on by the alcohol. Since it was a dream, he didn't need to worry about her reaction. Willow didn't know what he was going to do, but she felt it was strange. Believing he was in a dream, Chester decided to confess his feelings. After all, Willow wouldn't react in a dream. However, Chester hesitated, his hands trembling. Although Willow didn't know what he wanted to say, she encouraged him to speak. Before meeting Willow, Chester thought he would live his entire life without needing a family. Willow didn't understand what he meant. How could someone not need a family? But for Chester, he was used to being alone. He didn't have a loving family like Willow's. For the Chester of the past, family during that time was nothing more than a prison ruled by my father's restraints and oppression. Father was very demanding. He treated me like a puppet, all in the name of being a parent. Those days were my darkest. So, family, to me, was a terrifying concept. After I became an adult, I chose to leave the mansion. I wandered alone for a long time afterward. I've grown accustomed to being alone, making my own decisions, acting on my own. Chester gazed intently at Willow. So, this is the first time I felt this way. That felt so warm. Willow wondered, aren't we just in a marriage of convenience? What is he talking about? Since meeting Willow, Chester's perspective had changed. Willow is so radiant. Being with you all makes me want to live like this forever. A loving, harmonious family. Chester thought this for the first time. He wanted to step into the shelter called family. Willow, lost in thought, didn't understand. What was Chester trying to say? Was he really drunk? Or was he sleepwalking? But the more Chester talked, the sleepier he became. He thought, I'm clearly dreaming. Why am I so tired? Just as he was about to say something crucial, he couldn't hold on any longer. Still gripping Willow's hand, he fell onto the bed, pulling Willow down with him. Chester started snoring. Not only did he fall asleep, but he also kept holding Willow's hand. No matter how hard Willow tried, she couldn't break free. She was exhausted. Honestly, what am I supposed to do now that he's asleep? She had no choice. It seemed she could only wait for Chester to wake up. She rolled over to the other side of the bed. He really can't hold his liquor, but he's quite a different person when he's drunk. Willow couldn't help but steal glances at him. She was thinking about what Chester hadn't finished saying. As long as I'm here. What was he going to say after that? Eventually, she drifted off to sleep. The next day, Chester woke up with a headache. He regretted falling asleep. It was all because his father-in-law kept urging him to drink glass after glass. He shouldn't have kept drinking with him. He got completely drunk on their first meeting and even fell asleep. Chester was mortified. This is so embarrassing. I need to get up. He grabbed the blanket and suddenly heard snoring. He turned his head and froze. Why is Willow sleeping next to me? Why is she here? Startled, Chester scrambled backward. He pushed back too hard and tumbled off the bed with a loud thud, waking Willow. She rubbed her eyes and saw that Chester was awake. She had fallen asleep too. Chester jumped up. "Why are you here too?" he demanded. Willow simply replied, "You wouldn't let me go, and you're holding my hand so tightly." These suggestive words stunned Chester. Willow then exclaimed, "It really hurt," which frightened Chester even more. He thought he had actually done something. This was too cute. Willow knew Chester must have misunderstood, so she decided to tease him, letting him think he really couldn't remember. Chester felt his blood run cold. Willow found him so adorable that she couldn't help but burst out laughing. She told him he hadn't done anything wrong. Chester coughed twice to ease the awkwardness, but still apologized for his drunken behavior. Willow didn't mind and invited Chester to go out for a walk to clear his head. They went for a walk together, Willow leading the way and Chester following close behind. They looked quite well matched. Willow occasionally glanced at Chester. Chester's expression was neutral. He remembered his drunken words, how he'd wanted to call her by her name and kept calling her Willow. Compared to earlier, he was far too normal now. But being told those words were just drunken ramblings somehow makes me feel even worse. But what's there to expect from our relationship? Willow sighed. She didn't know that Chester was also stealing glances at her. He felt like she had something to say. Perhaps. It's probably because I was acting crazy drunk before, Chester thought irritably. He was thinking that Willow seemed to have something to say. Chester noticed this too. She indicated that she wouldn't mind whatever he said. Willow thought he was rambling. She just wanted to ask if he was feeling any better after all that alcohol. And she was very grateful for his performance. His acting was good. It put her parents at ease. Chester appeared calm on the surface. He felt good and happy inside. He had also received praise. Willow didn't think so. She felt that he was so cold, dropping the act as soon as it was over, and felt a little wronged. Not wanting to deal with him, she turned her head and said coldly, out of spite, "Let's keep our ceremony simple then. Since it's all fake, there's no need for a big ceremony, right?" Chester had persuaded the Baron and Baroness, Willow's parents, to agree to his marriage with Willow. However, his poor communication skills led to a misunderstanding with Willow. Chester was surprised by Willow saying it was a fake marriage, though it wasn't entirely unexpected. Willow thought it was just a formality and there was no need for it to be extravagant. "Yes, it is indeed fake. It's all fake to me." Chester felt a little dejected. He still agreed to Willow's request. He felt he had gotten a little too caught up in it today. He needed to be more rational. They sat down. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Chester broke the silence. He remembered a question he wanted to ask her. He asked if she was free next week, if she could spare a day. Chester had received an invitation to a banquet and hoped Willow could accompany him. It's Countess Hopley's daughter, Miss Coroni's, birthday banquet. Although I don't really want to go, there will be many nobles there. I want to formally introduce you to them. When Rohan gave him the invitation, he hadn't wanted to go. However, because of Count Hopley's good reputation, he had to. Rohan was resourceful. Knowing Chester didn't want to go, he suggested he invite Miss Willow. This made Chester hesitate. Rohan also gave him an idea. Since the wedding was only a few days away, he could take this opportunity to announce the marriage at the banquet. Moreover, the banquet was being held to celebrate Miss Hopley's coming of age, so there were sure to be many people there, making it the perfect opportunity. Chester was nervous. He didn't know if Willow would agree. He glanced at Willow and thought she didn't seem to like attracting attention. He was about to suggest she think it over, since it wasn't until next week, but Willow readily agreed. However, Chester was still a little worried. "Are you sure you're okay with this? As our relationship becomes public in aristocratic society, the more attention we attract, the harder it will be." Chester was concerned about whether Willow could handle it. Although Chester was concerned for Willow, she interpreted it as him worrying about what would happen after the contract expired. Willow also felt it was a bit troublesome. The more people know, the more likely we are to be affected by their words. I don't mind, but my parents will definitely be heartbroken by the gossip. But to prevent others from discovering that this marriage is fake, I have to act perfectly, just like your grace. What does it matter how many people are watching? This is what my boss asked me to do. Even if there's gossip after the contract expires, it doesn't matter. Time will resolve it. And even if I divorce your grace, I don't plan to remarry. So it's fine. Chester was surprised by her words. He also took Willow's statement about not planning to remarry to mean that he would be her only husband. Before he could fully indulge in this pleasant thought, he was interrupted. Chester snapped back to reality. He said he would come to pick Willow up then. For some reason, Willow suddenly found Chester quite endearing, just now. Feeling a little shy under Willow's gaze, he stood up to say goodbye to the Baron and Baroness before leaving. Willow thanked him for coming and asked how Raffi was doing. She had been worried about him ever since she left him there after their last meeting. Learning that Raffi was doing well eased her worries. Although they had a fight last time, he wasn't hurt. I wasn't there, but I heard it was quite intense. Willow, who had been relieved, was startled again. Raffi got into a fight. After Chester's explanation, she understood. Willow was glad everything turned out all right. Chester found it strange that Willow wasn't angry. Having been about to leave, they both sat back down and continued chatting. The original female lead finally makes her appearance. How could I be angry? It's just a shame I didn't get to see them released from prison. Willow thought, I must be adorable. Seeing Willow in a good mood, Chester decided to discuss something with him. Marquis Highland wants Ein to stay here temporarily. He was originally planning to move to the countryside for his wife's health, but they didn't want their daughter to live such a stifled life at an age when she should be lively. It's true, she's still so young. Making her care for her mother all day is just too pitiful. So I'm planning to bring her here to live with Raffi. I wanted to ask for your opinion, Willow. Willow hadn't expected Chester to ask him. In Chester's mind, Willow was now practically a member of the Hylos family, so it was only right to ask. Willow assumed Chester was just being polite since they were engaged. However, the way Chester looked at him always led Willow to misunderstand. Every time, it felt like a smitten gaze. Their hands brushed accidentally, and Willow quickly pulled away. His feelings were becoming increasingly strange. Willow just wanted to give him a quick answer and send him away. He said he agreed completely. It would be good for Raffi to have a new friend. Chester was pleased. He'll bring her over after the wedding. Chester's smile was a little too dazzling for Willow, piercing straight to his heart. Willow thought Chester looked incredibly handsome with a smile in his eyes. Staring at Chester, he wondered if he had something on his face. The thought snapped him back to reality. He quickly denied it, not wanting Chester to see through him. He made up an excuse, saying he wasn't looking at Chester, but at the flowers he liked over there. To cover his nervousness, he even pointed at the flowers. Turning his head, he realized it was a Venus flytrap. That was awkward. Why would there be something like that in his house anyway? Night had completely fallen. Chester was really about to leave this time. Still tipsy, the Baron, supported by his wife, stumbled out to see Chester off. It seemed the Baron and his wife truly approved of their marriage this time. They expressed their delight at getting to know Chester. Chester also thanked them for their hospitality. The still tipsy Baron was rather endearing, holding Chester's hand and asking him not to leave so soon, urging him to stay and play for a few more days. He even started crying and rubbing against Chester, prompting the Baroness to pull him away. Willow also hurriedly suggested they help his father inside, offering to see Chester off himself. Unsure of what crazy thing his father might do next, Willow quickly ushered Chester out. Chester had wanted Willow to go back inside first, but Willow insisted on staying with him until the carriage arrived. Willow's hunch proved correct. Outside was completely empty. Not a single carriage was in sight. With just the two of them outside, the silence was a bit strange. He frantically searched for topics to avoid the awkwardness. Willow broke the silence first, saying he felt bad for always having Chester visit his parents, bothering him. But this time it had gone well. He said it was all right if Chester didn't come next time. Chester didn't agree. He said he would still visit when he had time. He admitted he might not drink so much next time, but he was happy to be called son-in-law by his father-in-law. He kept stealing glances at Willow. Seeing Chester was set on it, Willow decided not to stop him. Chester recalled Rohan's advice about winning a lady's heart. A young lady's true feelings cannot be bound by marriage. You must go on dates. You must create opportunities to be alone together. Chester was a little nervous. He needed to act natural. He casually asked Willow if he was busy tomorrow, hoping to invite him out. Willow replied that he was going to the Smet shop tomorrow, the one that specializes in magic tools. Chester assumed Willow must need something magical. Willow said he was just going to browse. It was nothing important. He couldn't tell Chester he needed to buy a poison detector, because in the original story, from the moment Raffi returned to the Hylos family, he constantly received death threats. Of course, according to the original storyline, Raffi will be all right in the end, but my feelings for him run so deep. I simply can't leave him alone, and I've already changed the course of events. Something else I haven't foreseen might happen. Willow felt uneasy. I need to at least prepare something. A poison detector. It's a shame Casis's bag can't produce something like that. As they chatted, the carriage finally arrived. It was a bit sudden. Chester hadn't finished saying what he wanted to say. How could the carriage arrive already? Willow urged Chester to leave and be careful. Finally, with no other option, Chester hesitantly asked if he could go with her. It turned out she was talking about going to the shop tomorrow. Willow was worried he'd be too busy, but the man immediately replied, his face resolute, asking Willow to allow him to accompany her. Willow's heart pounded. She didn't understand what this man was doing. It felt like he was asking her out on a date. Willow just stared at him silently. Chester, thinking Willow might not want to be alone with him, had 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. Just as Willow was starting to feel a flutter of excitement, this incredibly dense man said it was to avoid suspicion that they needed to appear close in public. Of all the reasons, he chose such a flimsy excuse. Willow felt a flicker of annoyance, but didn't show it, agreeing to this ridiculous reason. But Willow also wanted Chester to bring Raffi along. What was supposed to be a nice outing turned into this. The tongue-tied Chester couldn't find a reason to refuse. He felt a bit dejected, but every beginning is difficult. At least he managed to get Willow to go out with him. They agreed to meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. in front of the Smet shop. Watching Chester's carriage disappear into the distance, Willow let out a long sigh. She decided that these past few days must have been her imagination. These inappropriate thoughts shouldn't appear again. It would only make things awkward for everyone. Meanwhile, Duke Fertia was putting young Master Raffi to bed. Raffi was clearly happy today. He waved goodnight to Fertia, telling her to rest well too. He also said goodnight to the cat, even nuzzling it. The cat didn't seem pleased at all. Perhaps tired from playing, Raffi quickly fell asleep, little snores escaping his lips. The cat suddenly opened its eyes and looked towards the window. Fertia hadn't locked it today, giving the cat its opportunity. It dashed over and with a creak pushed the window open. After pretending to be well-behaved and finally lowering everyone's guard, it could finally return to its master. With a whoosh, it jumped from the upstairs window, and with the Duke away, today was the perfect opportunity. It dashed off, determined to escape before being discovered. The cat ran as fast as its legs could carry it. Just one more wall, and it would be free. It jumped, freedom within its grasp. Just one last step, crack. The barrier at the gate stopped the cat in its tracks. That cursed barrier. The cat didn't get out. A rustling sound came from the bushes near the gate. The cat, one of High Ease's accomplices, had planned to enter the Duke's mansion to find him, but it couldn't find a way in. One of them was even having second thoughts, wanting to go back and make a plan. Luckily, the other accomplice reminded him that if they went back, their master wouldn't let them off easily. He might chop our heads off the moment we open our mouths. The two trembled in fear. What were they supposed to do? It's not time for the harbor change at the Duke's mansion yet. The other one found it strange. He's not here for the harbor change. He found a dead cat nearby and came to ask if his companion recognized it. His companion recognized the cat. It had been loitering around the area recently. It was the same cat as the one by the gate. Things were getting out of hand. The two hidden in the bushes overheard their conversation and decided to report back to Master Billy IP immediately. They rushed back to inform him. Billy IP grabbed one of them by the collar. He leaned in and demanded, "High Ezo is dead." The man was trembling too much to speak. His companion answered, "It's absolutely true. We saw it with our own eyes. The guards were holding the body of a strange, white cat." Billy IP trembled with rage. He couldn't believe they dared to touch his familiar. He threw the man aside and slammed his hand on the table. "I'll kill them all. Not a single member of the Hylos family will be spared. Bring me their heads." Terrified, the two men ran for their lives, not looking back. After they left, Billy IP swayed slightly. He hadn't expected them to resort to such measures. First, it was her mother, and now Haiza too. Billy IP gritted his teeth, his whole body trembling as he shakily removed his mask. He smashed everything on the table to pieces. Red wine splashed onto the mask, dripping from the eye holes, mirroring Billy IP's fury. Gnashing his teeth, he swore he would tear the entire Hylos family limb from limb. Haiza's two guards, thinking him dead, had buried him. It was only when an insect accidentally poked him that he woke up, startled. He was a mess. covered in dirt and leaves. He finally managed to claw his way out of the ground. However, he had no memory of how he'd been buried. The barrier covered the entire territory without a single flaw. Damn it, I can't do anything in this cat form. I need to get this limiter off quickly. It's all because of this limiter that I'm in such a sorry state. And if I don't get it off soon and stay in this form, I'm worried I won't be able to return to my human form. A rustling sound nearby startled the cat. The guards noticed the cat and started to approach. The cat immediately darted back to avoid being seen by the guards. That would be disastrous. It scurried back to Raffi. When Fertia came to clean, she found Raffi covered in dirt and assumed he'd been up to something. Raffi refused to take the blame. He hadn't done anything. The cat had come back while he was sleeping, covered in dirt. Raffi picked up the cat to show Fertia, and the cat seemed to be injured. He wanted Fertia to take a look. Fertia picked up the cat and turned it over and over. The cat, initially fine, was now dizzy from being spun around. A close inspection revealed no injuries. But now the most important thing is, Fertia handed the cat back to Raffi. Even though it's late, young Master Raffi and the cat must have a bath. Not only was the cat naturally afraid of water, but Raffi didn't like baths either. But what choice did they have? They were the ones who got themselves so dirty. Could Fertia help them bathe? Both Raffi and the cat were reluctant. They stalled, but Fertia forcefully picked up Raffi, who in turn held the cat. The cat, terrified of water, struggled, but couldn't break free. No matter how much they protested, Fertia was absolutely determined not to let them go to bed dirty. Their howls echoed through the Duke's mansion. Chester, just arriving home, found the cries strange. He ran into Lohan and asked what was happening at the mansion. Why were there screams? Lohan wasn't sure what was going on either, but vaguely thought it sounded like a cat. He planned to check later. Chester said he would go himself, as he needed to speak with Raffi anyway. He needed to tell him about meeting Willow tomorrow. The two walked one behind the other. Lohan occasionally glanced at Chester, curiosity piqued. He wondered if Chester's meeting with Willow's parents had gone well. Since he returned so late, it must have gone okay. Hearing Lohan's words, Chester secretly reveled in the memory of Willow's expression, her smile, and the Baron, his future father-in-law, calling him son-in-law over and over. He also recalled the Baroness saying she would entrust Willow to him. He couldn't help but smile. He completely ignored Lohan. Seeing the Duke's expression, Lohan concluded that things must have gone smoothly. It had been a long time since he'd seen such a happy smile on the Duke's face. Chester couldn't let him see through his thoughts. He pretended to be angry, blaming Lohan for almost ruining everything. Lohan was confused. He hadn't done anything. Chester blamed him for choosing the wrong gift, which supposedly angered the Baron and Baroness. Lohan was speechless. The gift. But hadn't the Duke chosen it himself? Why blame him? He then gave Lohan a chance to redeem himself by instructing him to immediately go to the Smet shopping district and reserve a table at a good restaurant. Lohan asked which day he should reserve for. Without hesitation, Chester said tomorrow. He seemed rather eager for this date. Lohan was incredulous, but had no right to argue. He hadn't expected the usually straightforward Chester to be so thoughtful. Chester even specifically told Lohan that Willow preferred seafood and meat over vegetables. He was definitely love-struck. Lohan recommended BB Restaurant and Belder Restaurant. Both were famous and had a great atmosphere. However, if I knew what Willow likes to eat specifically or any other preferences, I could choose a more suitable restaurant. Chester pondered for a moment. Remembering they were taking Raffi along, he thought it would be great if the restaurant had a children's play area. Talk about rich. I've never heard of either of these restaurants having such amenities. Money talks. Upon hearing that neither restaurant had a play area, he instructed Lohan to book both restaurants and have play areas installed in each by tomorrow. This stumped Lohan. Chester, unconcerned, urged Lohan to get it done. He initially intended to just reserve 3 seats, but then he changed his mind. He ordered Lohan to book the entire restaurants. He couldn't have anyone disturbing his first date with Willow. He held his head high, the picture of arrogance. With that, Chester turned to leave, leaving a bewildered Lohan behind. The poor worker was clearly in for another all-nighter. Oh, woe is me, Lohan lamented. The Duke has a crush, but why am I the one suffering? At Fertia's insistence, Raffi finally took a bath. Freshly scrubbed, he looked much more presentable, skipping and hopping towards Chester. He sweetly called out, "Uncle Chester," and explained that he had to take a late bath because he'd gotten mud on himself from the cat. So that's what happened, Chester said. Unlike Raffi, the cat wasn't so lucky. Sounds of splashing and distressed meows echoed from the bathroom. Chester told Raffi about his plans to see Willow tomorrow. Raffi's eyes lit up. He was thrilled at the prospect of seeing Willow. The thought of seeing Willow filled him with joy. He jumped into Chester's arms, figuring that his uncle must be just as excited as he was. A smile spread across Chester's face. He hugged Raffi tightly. Both of them eagerly anticipated the next day.